Game of Thrones, the rage of spreading flames. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like. And if you'd like to support us and access extra content, we are now on Ko-Fi with open arms. Chapter 1 Leonor. Rumble. The sound of lightning and thunder went away, the sky opened and the clouds dispersed, and the dim sunlight shone through the dispersed clouds, illuminating the tower-like castle at the top of the cliff. The rain flowed down the tightly fitting castle walls and merged into the rocks, soil and the sea, and inside the tightly covered castle walls, a banquet was blooming in the tall hall. There is a big horned buck with a head-hanging crown embroidered on the yellow shield pattern, leaping from right to left. The name of this crowned stag flag emblem is Baratheon, and the castle with a grand banquet is the Baratheon family's territory. Fancy Castle. The long table in Fancy Castle is filled with soft and sweet bread, cakes, hot pies, and roasted beef, sheep, pigs and horse meat. The fat meat chop ribs are big, and the plump sausages are almost full. Roll off the plate. The crowd was bustling, and everyone held a cup in their hands, either made of wood, iron, gold and silver, inlaid with gems, filled with fine wine from the wines, ciders, fire wines and ales produced in Qing Island. There are many under the delicious food and wine. People talked enthusiastically until a figure jumped to a high place. He raised the silver wine glass in his hand and shouted loudly, "Come on, guests, let us raise our wine glasses for the two newborns, Baratheons. Thanks to the Virgin for giving us 2 new lives, and thanks to Ms. Cassana." In the full hall, on the arms raised like a forest, cheers brewed from the mellow wine. Cassana, Cassana, the Virgin of the 7 gods. He is the representative of maternal love and nurturing, and it is said that he sent a new life to this world. Every pregnant woman is the embodiment of the Virgin, and so is every mother. With cheers after cheer, joy was pushed to climax, while in the room in the castle, Cassana Iceman Baratheon was completely unaware of it. The newly born mother was watching her 2 children and talking to her husband Stephen Baratheon, who was also not involved in the banquet. Urged him to go and have a drink with the guest. Stephen Baratheon, the current Duke of Windsburg, refused his wife's request. "No need, let's talk about it until the day of naming. Speaking of which, Cassana, what should we name our 2 children?" As Duke Stephen said, one of the 2 children in his arms was held by Cassana, suddenly giggled and pulled out his little arm from the swaddle and swung it as a mother. Cassana looked at the little guy in the cradle and his little arms and face. She didn't open her eyes yet, but she laughed extremely loudly, and her heart felt infinite love. "Look how happy he smiled and how healthy he was. How about calling him Leano? This is your grandfather's name." Duke Stephen's grandfather was named Leonor Baratheon, the best knight in the 7 kingdoms. He was nicknamed Laughter Storm because he laughed loudly whenever he fought against his opponent, Leonor Baratheon. Aye, very good. So what about this gentle little cutie? Stephen happily accepted his wife's proposal, and turned his eyes to another quiet little guy. "It's your turn, dear. You are testing me. I think about it. How about calling him Renly? Renly Baratheon, very good name, my love." Cassana praised her husband for her son's name, which made Duke Baratheon feel very satisfied, not to mention the Duke and couple who were spilling their dog food, Leonor Baratheon, who was held in her arms by Miss Cassana. Or perhaps the time traveler named Qing was full of joy. Here I would like to introduce our protagonist Qing, a Chinese in the 21st century. He was raised by his grandfather since childhood. He has no different specialties. He just has some luck and takes advantage of the time traveling through the army car. After staying in the uterus for 10 months, he was finally born, and then he heard the familiar electronic synthesizer. The host was detected and the current binding was passed through the protagonist training system, and the binding was successful. "I've become the protagonist." Qing heard the electronic sound prompt and smiled in her mother Cassana's arms, not knowing that she had received the name of her grandfather. Because of this, if he learned about his naming situation, he would have to make fun of him. He was originally reincarnated and traveled to others as his son, but he did not want to become his grandfather. But he can't do this now, because he can't understand the common language in the local Westeros continent 2 or 1. It was his full attention attracted by the bound time traveler system. Next, there is the favorite lottery draw for beginners. The host has successfully traveled through time. A reward of novice for travelers is now issued. This reward is given randomly. Will you receive it? Receive. Although his eyes have not been opened yet, Lu Qing can't wait to be the protagonist. As he made a sound, the system bound to his body immediately started to operate. The reward for randomly issuing newbies will start, and the reward will be the content of the original draft of the Taoist scriptures. This prize is the Tao Sutra compiled by the Dacian dynasty of Yangshan world, which is a collection of monks and Taoists such as Fang Xiandao, Taishangdao, Tachjin Temple, and Confucian celebrities. It combines astronomy, geography, agricultural essence, medicine, and divination, alchemy, monks and Taoism and other miscellaneous arts as one. It is considered a fantasy encyclopedia. The cost of this book was originally intended to be the use of universal preaching arts and immortals. Later, the Dacian dynasty realized that if the essence of the inner world was obtained by evil people and flowed into the people or Yunmeng and other countries, it would cause trouble to the world. Therefore, the printed book was collected and destroyed in a concentrated manner. All the content of the various arts in Taoism is removed, and only the words of monks in Taoism are left to the world. The current lottery won the original draft of the Taoist scriptures and distributed to the host. Please prepare the host, 1, 2, and 3, and distribute it. After the system's prompt sounded, Lu Qing felt a pile of things being stuffed into his mind in an instant. Before he could experience it carefully, an alarm suddenly sounded in his mind. Alarm, alarm. The system encounters an unknown fault, and requests the terminal to provide instructions to respond. Wait, you shouldn't think your system is my master. Why are there still terminals? And what can attack the crossing system? Hacker. Lu Qing was shocked when he heard the alarm. He suddenly realized that he had thought it was simple. This mysterious time travel system does not seem to be a gift from fate, or perhaps the gift from fate has been invisibly won. The bid for the price. Receive terminal commands. The time traveler system was attacked by the origin consciousness of Westeros world and could not continue to bind. The binding is now beginning to be unbind. The unbinding is successful. The system is separated. Goodbye to the host. Good guy. This system is so polite. Before Lu Qing could shout, she felt something in her body being stripped away as the Goldfinger system. It's gone. As a time traveler, Lu Qing was very stunned. He didn't expect to stay. But the electronic sound from the system just now really made him feel a little chilled and terrified. It's like the brain is placed in a glass tank, and everything you think about is revealed also. The terminal of the system and the original will of the world. What are the attitudes of those two things towards themselves? Why does the terminal bind the system to itself? Will the world's original consciousness recognize itself as a smuggler? I won't give myself a lot of bad luck. Lu Qing's mind was very confused. He thought a lot for a while, and it was not until a while before he thought of the last prompt from the system. The time traveler system is attacked by the origin consciousness of Westeros. Then what he is traveling through time now is the world of ice and fire, known as the Song of Fucking Kill, Game of Thrones, Rhapsody of a Fatty Man, Westeros. Then which family did he travel to? As the protagonist, Lu Qing is still in a state of misunderstanding about what is happening around her. Chapter 2. The Baratheon family. Lu Qing was eager to understand everything, but the baby's body was not enough to do anything. He could only listen to the buzzing conversation in his ears, and the soft and tenderness delivered to his mouth from time to time. Just need to suck it lightly. Can suck out the softness of milk. There is no way, even if it is the brain in the tank. He can only lie flat now. Lu Qing lying flatly ate and slept, and at the same time checked the Tao Sutra of the Yangshan world in his mind. Although the system was unbounded by the attack on the world consciousness, the content of the initial draft of the Tao Sutra instilled in his mind was still there, and a large group of knowledge was allowed to be read at will as systematically introduced. The Tao Sutra comes from the Yangshan world and was written by monks and Taoists from Fang Xiandao, Taishangdao, Tachjin Temple and many famous scholars. The beginning is the general outline. The world is like a sea of suffering, and the body of a human being is like a raft crossing the sea. However, the sea of suffering is boundless, and the raft will eventually rot. Only when the soul is strong can you abandon the boat and raft and use your own strength to swim to the other side of the sea of suffering. The body is rotten, but the soul is immortal. With this idea, the Taoist arts in the Yangshan world are the art of practicing the soul, and the Taoist arts in it are divided into 10 levels, namely, concentration of the spirit, out of the shell, night tour, day tour, expelling objects, revealing the shape, and attaching the body. Body capture, thunder disaster, and Yang God. Because the reward defined by the system is the initial draft of the Taoist Sutra, Although the cultivation technique of souls does not have the essence of the supreme scriptures and sects like Taishang Taoism and Dachan Temple, fortunately, the content is comprehensive and has not been deleted. The key point is to point out all the taboos everywhere. Qing was trapped in his young body, so he simply devoted himself to it. He slowly followed the instructions in the Taoist scriptures to sip breast milk every day, calm down his mind, and visualize the pagoda between his eyebrows. Use the newborn blood in the body to refine the soul. As time passed, he slowly opened his eyes and obtained his official name on the naming day, Leonor Baratheon. At the naming day banquet, he, lying in his nurse's arms, understood his origin in this life. When he saw the crowned stag flag in the banquet hall, the Baratheon family, who lived in the storm for generations, took the angry flames as a motto. This is a bit pitfall. Qing, who understood, might say that Leonor felt a headache. He has not read Martin's original work, but he also learned about the future of the times through TV series and video popularization in the Grand Game of Thrones. The Baratheon family was the owner of the highest Iron Throne of Rights in Westeros at the beginning of the plot. At the heart of the storm, with the opening of Game of Thrones, one member of the Baratheon family died in a conspiracy, died in power killing, or was nailed to death as a bride. In short, it's either a must-have death or a waiting state of death. This is a joke. Leonor's soul, which was gradually calming due to his cultivation of his mind, was boiling in the moment when he knew the news, but fortunately he soon settled down again because he was in his mother's arms. He always heard the plump woman call him Leonor, and the little guy little Renly next to him. His current identity is Stephen Baratheon, Duke of Windcastle. Leonor Baratheon. He has his elder brother Robert Baratheon and Stannis Baratheon, while his younger brother is Renly Baratheon. The Baratheon family has not yet obtained the Iron Throne and is still the Lord of the Stormland in the south, but from the perspective of the future person sitting on the Iron Throne, his brother Robert Baratheon, this situation will not last long. Leonor regretted it a little when he was using the book. Why didn't he read this novel back then? Because he knew that Robert Baratheon was a fat king. He knew nothing about the other things of the Baratheon family, and now he was limited by physical and language knowledge, so he could not collect them from other aspects. Information the outside world is still in a state of being half understood. Leonor could only listen carefully to the conversation between the left and right nurses and parents and servants, learn their pronunciations, and prepare for himself to learn to speak and read. In this way, Leonor grew up slowly and showed his excellent language talent to the people around him. All right. Actually, there is nothing great. I have eavesdropped on people talking for several months, or maybe 1 year. Anyway, after listening to it a lot, I know what a word is most likely to mean, and I will quietly do it again. You can also practice the accent since he could speak. The Baratheon family also inherited the tradition of aristocraticism and began to send a bachelor named Crizin to educate him to guide him on how to speak and write common languages. And Valyrian, Westeros' main language, is a common language, but due to local usage habits, many variations have been divided into different varieties at the same time. There are other common languages among the nobles, that is, Valyrian. Valyrian is the native language of Targaryen, a family of the dragons on the Iron Throne, and is the language of Valyria, the old fortress of freedom. The Targaryen family was one of the former rulers of the ancient fortress Valyria, where they mastered the technique of taming dragons. Later, Valyria was destroyed by natural disasters, and the Targaryen family brought 3 dragons to Westeros, conquered the Andals, Loinus and ancestors on this land, and conquered the family. The sword was taken and cast with dragon flames to form a throne, which was the symbol of the top of power, the Iron Throne. After learning about the history of the Targaryen family's fortune, Leonor felt that the Iron Throne was somewhat similar to the Heshibi in China. Their own value has become higher from the meaning of symbolizing rights, which has attracted countless people to pursue it. Crazy, the Heshibi changed hands several times and finally became obscured in history. Although all dynasties claim to have obtained great treasures, most of them were imitations. Later power fighters no longer claim to own the Heshibi, just because they understood that the symbolic meaning of the thing was greater than the actual meaning. Zhu Wen, the leader of the warlord in the late Tang dynasty, made it clear, the emperor, those who are strong in the army will do it. I am afraid that the final fate of the Iron Throne is almost the same as that of Heshibi. Leonor thought of this as he grew older. Leonor learned the common language of this world in Valyrian. He could walk on the ground, looking at everything around him novelly, and had no idea that the 2 figures were missing around him until this afternoon. After a storm passed, the entire Fanxi castle was in an uproar. The storm site is located in the southeast corner of Westeros and is located on the coastal cliffs, so there are constant storms here all year round. Whenever a huge storm comes, Nearby residents will flock to Fengxi Castle to take refuge in groups because the rumored Fengxi Castle was built with magic, only it couldn't withstand the storm from the narrow sea. After every storm, the castle was messy. Leonor learned to walk. He was very interested in Bachelor Cleason's telling him that the family's castle was built with magic, but before he could walk out the door, he was in Nanny Michaela. He rushed to pick it up and walked to the hall. The hall of the castle was noisy, with many people making noise, including his brother, Robert Baratheon, who had just returned from Eagle's Nest 2 years ago, and their great-uncle Herbert Baratheon. Robert has a handsome face that is completely different from the Fat King in the TV series. His face is trimmed and his black hair is meticulously repaired. He looked angry and stood in front of his younger brother Stannis, whose lips were tightly pursed, and scolded loudly, "It's all Targaryen. If it weren't for the Order of the Dragon, my father wouldn't have taken a boat to Valentis, let alone encountered this storm." As the oldest man of Baratheon, Robert was the third son of Duke Leonor, the uncle of Duke Stephen, Robert's uncle, with a white beard and a strong old face. "Refute the words of my nephew loudly, Rob. Pay attention to your words. Your father's death has nothing to do with His Majesty the King, it's just that the stranger summoned him. No matter how bad Targaryen is, he is also the owner of the Iron Throne. If he offended him it is very likely to cause a catastrophe to the Baratheon family." This was Robert's consideration, but Robert, who was only 16 years old, didn't understand this. He was sent to Eagle Nest City as the adopted son of the Aelin family since he was 9 years old. He had just returned to stay for less than 2 years and his parents died at sea. He hated Targaryens, so he cursed directly in public. The two sides were quarreling, and Leonor was shocked in the arms of her nurse Michaela, and then he realized that the Baratheons, who often watched him write and speak, were not around. According to the argument between the eldest brother Robert and his uncle, they seemed to be heading to the trading city-state of Valentis, a trade continent in the east of the continent of Essos, to serve the king. But when they returned, they encountered a storm at the sea. Leonor's heart was heavy, and at the same time he was a little surprised. And he probably guessed how the Iron Throne belonging to Targaryen fell into Baratheon's hands. Chapter 3: The Wrong Spring. It's noisy, but it can't be restored. Duke Stephen Baratheon and his wife Cassandra Iceman Baratheon have lost contact because the Crown Prince Rhaegar, the current king heiress find a suitable wife and encounter a storm near the sea. The fleet that was waiting for rescue returned. Only a dwarf clown with red and green squares on her face was found, and a letter from Duke Stephen. The letter was written by the Duke on his way back and was intended to send it to King Heiress II. In the letter, he apologized to the king, saying that he had not found a suitable princess, but he found a very interesting clown. He could make tricks, speak riddles, and play magic, and sing in 4 languages. He decided to make this clown. Bring it back. Duke Stephen believes that this square-faced clown can be loved by his son Robert, and at the same time, it can also help his second son Stannis, who does not like to laugh, learn to smile. It can be seen that Duke Stephen was still thinking about the child before his death, but he did not expect that he would die at the bottom of the sea. The clown he mentioned was rescued from the sea. Unfortunately, he had become crazy and could not have tricks or magic at all. Even his memory was completely destroyed, and he would only giggle and twitch indirectly. The beams of Baratheon and Targaryen have been formed invisibly. Next, the Fengxi Castle held a grand funeral, which was mourned by the bishop of the local Seven Gods Church. Many guests came at the funeral, including the Lannister family of Duke of Caen City in the west, the Terrier family of the River Bay High Court, the Tully family of the River Flood City, and the representatives of the Dorne Sun Jiuji City in the south, etc. Even the royal Targaryen family sent Count Irving Merrywees to pay their respects. Among them, the representative of Winterfell in the north is Duke Rickard Stark, who takes his eldest son Brandon, second son Ed and third sister Lyanna, Duke John Elling of the East and his nephew Albert. The Starks and the Ellings are the most special because Rickard's second son Ed and Robert had grown up together as John Elling's adopted sons. Ed's arrival comforted Robert with a bad temper and congratulated him on him after the death of Duke Stephen. According to the law of succession, Robert Baratheon, as the eldest son, has automatically succeeded, becoming the Lord of the Windsniffle Castle. The Lord and Guardian of the Stormland Record also congratulated the incident and announced another happy event at the funeral, that is, his 3 daughters, Lyanna, will marry Robert, who has become the Duke, and his eldest son will soon marry Hegian. Caitlin, the eldest daughter of the Tully family in the Durban city, is his wife. Duke Horst from the Tullys also came forward to announce that what Duke Rickard said was true, that his eldest daughter would marry Brandon, and his second daughter would marry Duke John Elin, widowed in Eagle Nest City. Westeros ethics are different from China. It is not uncommon for adopting fathers and sons to become brothers-in-law. Even Targaryen's royal family had the bad habit of getting married to relatives to ensure bloodline. It was later a devoted believer in the Church of the Seven Gods. The king issued relevant laws prohibiting close relatives' marriages. Westeros also had no idea of mourning, so the news announced at the funeral was not so abrupt, but it was a bit of a joyful voice. Many little nobles were busy coming forward to congratulate. And only Leonor, who was listening, was worried. Leonor recently learned the heraldic mottos of the Westeros family from Master Cleason, and naturally knew the weight of the Starks, the Ellings and the Tullys. These three families are the leading nobles in the north, east and Hegian, especially the Stark and Aelin families, which are the vassals and guardians in the north and east. The Tully family is a little worse. Although their family's Finglia is the best in Hegian, it does not have the title of vassal and guardian, and it cannot truly control the entire Hegian area. But its strength is not bad. But the key is that these three families are an ally with the Baratheon family, and the power formed has endangered the Iron Throne. Leonor confirmed the rebellion cases in China in history. He knew that rebellion was never based on whether you had a reason, but on whether you had strength. As long as you have the strength, you can make up one of the reasons immediately, and Liang Zi has already formed a long time ago. The anti-royal party has been formed now, and Robert even felt disgusted with Targaryen because of his father's death. The next step is to be the prelude to the war. Leonor was right. In the following time, his brother Robert did not go to the royal capital, King's Landing, to pay homage to King Aerys II, and Aerys II is also said to have gone crazy. He experienced a rebellion 4 years ago and almost gave up his life. After that, he locked himself in the castle, suspicious, and seemed to have ignored the new things to see in the future of the Duke of Hamborn. After more than 2 years of peace, Leonor's body was getting stronger and stronger, and he was running around in Finksy Castle all day long. At this time, Renly had just started to walk. The young Renly loves to laugh and move. Only when he is with his young brother, will his elder brother Robert be a little happier. He is depressed at other times, either drinking or looking for a woman. Leonor heard that his brother had an illegitimate daughter when he was in Eagle Nest City. It was a pity that he was only 14 or 15 years old at that time. He was full of complaints about his brother, but he couldn't dissuade him. After all, he was less than 4 years old, so he could only play with his own. He was wandering around Finksy Castle all day long, and according to Master Cleason's words, he went to explore the magic inside the castle. According to the family history taught by Master Cleason, the Baratheon family is divided into 2 sections according to the current division of mainstream historians in Westeros. Westeros history is divided into 2 sections, with the first Targaryen King Aegon starting the founding of the kingdom, which is called the first year of conquest. There were 3 epochs before the first year of the conquest, and the previous family history of the Baratheon family began from the earliest Dawn era. At that time, there was a man named Durham, who was said to have married Inni, the daughter of the wind god and the sea god. Therefore, the storm frequently attacked his territory, causing his castle to be destroyed and flew away 6 times. Durham was indomitable and built a castle for the 7th time, and was said to have received help from a boy named Brendan and the son of the aboriginal forest. It was the magic of the son of the forest that allowed a Windbreath castle to fight the storm to be completed. And a boy named Brandon was said to be the first founder of the Stark family, and also known as city builders. Brandon, because he built a great wall of desperateness that can also fight against the White Walkers and make the White Walkers unsurpassed. The eldest son of the current Duke of Stark, Rickard, is also called Brandon. Well, Leonor complains about this, and Westeros has too few vocabulary in order to distinguish the phenomenon of duplicate names. The Westeros often add nicknames or add suffixes to the name. For example, the first Stark family leader was called Brandon, and his full name was Stephen's son Leono, or Leonor Baratheon II. Back to the topic, it is said that there is magic in the Great Wall of Desperate Realm, which can prevent the White Woman from crossing, and the same is true for Finksy Castle. Leono was very curious about magic, and he soon found the answer inside the oldest walls of the castle. The oldest city wall is made of a mixture of cement-like mixture and stones, which is a perfect modern process, but this is not the most special. The most special thing is that there is a deep thought in the cement mixture and stones. Leonor practices meditation and forgetfulness, and is most sensitive to the soul and can keenly detect the thoughts in the cement stone. When his fingers touched the stones and bonded cement, he could hear the movement of the thoughts in his mind. The thought of running is spread throughout every brick and stone of the castle, making the city tightly fit and deeply rooted in the ground, not disturbed by storms. It is obvious that Westeros magic is similar to the Taoist arts in the Yangshan world, and Taoist arts or magic. Leonor found Master Cleason for this and asked him about magic and the Son of the Forest, because it is said that magic belongs to the Son of the Forest, and the ancestors also mastered some of it. But the root cause is still the Son of the Forest. Bachelor Cleason was a knowledgeable man, but occultism was not his specialty, and he also needed to prepare luggage for Stannis. Under Robert's leadership, the Baratheon family is preparing to go to Herrenberg to attend a martial arts competition held by the local Earls of Rivers, and Stannis will accompany them. The climate this year is wrong. It should be winter, but it has turned into warm spring. After talking for a while, Cleason, who is in his 60s, reiterated and scolded Leonor. "Leono, if I were you, I would focus more on history or philosophy. No matter how bad medical skills are, the old gods are not worth paying attention to. The Sons of the Forest, they have long been extinct. Stark, the family still thinks it is a wolf spirit." "Wolf spirit? What is that?" Leono heard a new word. "It is the Stark family that people think that their consciousness can enter the wolf's body." "Okay, don't ask about that kind of illusory thing anymore. What you should learn is knowledge rather than religion." Bachelor Cleason was a little angry and didn't want to pay attention to Leono again, and Leono ignored him. He was just a little surprised because the wolf spirit sounded like possessed. Chapter 4: Westeros Climate. The realm of Taoism is divided into 10 levels: concentration of the spirit, out of the shell, night tour, day tour, expelling objects, manifestation of the body, possession of the body, thunder tribulation, and yang guard. Among them, the main ability to cultivate to the realm of possession is to force the soul to a certain living body, while the later body grabbing is to completely abandon the body, and the soul exists alone, and is called a ghost. Immortal Leonor found magic that was almost like Taoist from the world of Westeros, and he was naturally overjoyed. It's just a pity that the bachelors don't seem to like magic, which prevents him from getting more information soon. Robert took Stannis to Herrenberg, and Uncle Habert, although he was old, also followed him. All the affairs of Winsburg were managed by Cleason, appointed by Robert, while Leonor served as the nominal acting city lord, serving as an eraser seal for the old bachelor. What he had to do every day was to take Renly to sit in the middle of the long table in the main hall of Fancy Castle, eating pies and drinking juice, and watching how the old bachelor mediates disputes for the nobles and civilians in the Stormland. The Baratheon family has received the title of vassal and guardianship of the Stormland for generations. Among them, the title of vassal is the right to manage the nobles, and guardians have military power. The two can actually be combined into one, because the nobles are lords, and the lord has all privileges over his territory. As long as he does not betray the kingdom and tradition, he can do anything. Therefore, there are many strange things such as the right to first night, the marriage tax, etc. The nobles who possess the positions of vassal and guardianship are the great nobles who truly dominate one side. Like the Tully family in the rushing city, although they are strong, they lack the power to command the entire Aegean land. The nobles of the Stormland and Westeros were based on their families. They served the throne. When the throne needed it, they needed to summon knights to help fight. The monarch also needs to help them maintain their rule, mediate aristocratic disputes, and litigate civil litigation. When Duke Stephen died, there were many disputes among the nobles, such as the shepherds of a certain family who declared that the second son of Earl Cavrin of Yalutin robbed his sheep, and the illegitimate son of the Grandison family in Quanchachang deer, and so on. In the existing law, only nobles can hunt deer. After Robert himself smashed the second son of Earl Tunkavering with an iron hammer and cut off the hands of the Grandison family's illegitimate son, now it is Leonor's turn to be the rubber seal, and the nobles' disputes are pitifully rare. Only 2 farmers have disputes over the fields, but they are quickly sentenced. Then the officials in the territory discuss this year's how to deal with it. The climate in Westeros is unstable, just like the Great Voyage has only one season per island, and Westeros has only one climate every year. Sometimes it is winter, sometimes it is spring, and sometimes it is summer, so the 4 seasons alternate. The climate is stable most of the time, as long as it is not on the cold winter or in the long summer dry season. The climate is acceptable. However, according to the bachelor's calculations of the school towns, this year is the winter festival, and the climate in the first half of the year is as cold as imagined. But before the cold year was over, the climate began to warm up, and I even heard that the winter snow roses in the gardens of Winterfell were blooming. The north is much colder than the south, and the roses in Winterfell are all open, which means the climate is really getting warmer. It is a good thing to have a warm and pleasant climate. After all, in that case, farmers do not need to suffer from severe cold and hunger. They can serve the fields with peace of mind and wait for the harvest, but it is different for the nobles who have accumulated food for a whole year. The arrival of spring early not only means that temperatures rise and stored food deteriorates, but also means that civilians do not need food and they will lose money. Yes, the cold and hungry winter is the opportunity for noblemen to make a fortune. They have accumulated a lot of food, and will increase the price of grain in the cold winter, and at the same time issue loans to the people and merchants. 9 outs and 13 outs and 3 outs are just a basic operation. Now that spring is coming early, the nobles who originally wanted to make a big profit have become big losses, so they began to ask the boss to solve the problem. This is also the responsibility of being a vassal. We must ensure the interests of the nobles under our command, otherwise who would like to recognize you as the boss? Master Kelazan's solution was to appease everyone, and then help find a way to trade city-states to sell grain, and quickly give out the grain in his hands. Yes, Baratheon is also a member of the evil feudal aristocrat. He also participated in the exploitation of civilians and speculation. He did not lend money, but all lenders had to pay taxes to Baratheon. The boss may lose money, and the nobles are not able to say anything, so they can only be temporarily suppressed. Leonor figured out the whole story and felt uncomfortable watching it from the side. He didn't want to care about this matter, but he thought about the importance of food to war, but he didn't dare to be careless. So when there was no one, he chatted with Qrizan and asked if he could collect some food reserves in the castle, but Qrizan refused. No, our existing technology cannot store too much food, and the reserved food must be sold immediately, otherwise it will rot. Finxabao's grain storage work will only be carried out in the middle of each year, using 3 years to reserve the previous year's grain, and then clear the stock and sell it in the winter year. This not only maintains public order in the territory and avoids starvation everywhere, but also makes a lot of money. It can be said that it is a way to achieve both worlds. Leono's method of storing grain would not work, and he has no technology to improve his grain reserves now, but he has other opinions. Can we make grain into wine for storage? The grain will be damaged, and wine probably won't be. Wine, a surprised light released in Qrizan's old eyes. Yes, the wine should be stored for a long time, and it doesn't matter if it's sold for a few years. Qrizan thought for a moment, feeling that the plan was very feasible, so he nodded. Maybe you can try it, Leonor. You think very well and should use your brain more in these aspects. In the future, you can help Robert manage the Stormland with Stannis. He also praised Leono, which made Leono a little proud and grinned. So, a simple workshop was quickly set up in Finxi Castle, and Qrizan invited the winemaker Borid, and recruited the farmers during the slack season. Bags of barley, oats and corn are carried out from the cellar and warehouse, soaked in a pot and cooked, then fermented and filtered, and after various processes, they are brewed into wine and stored. Also reminded by Leonor, Qrizan felt that the wine was easy to store and could be sold to various nobles. Therefore, after informing Robert of Harrenburg, he received his approval. He said that he would buy the food from the nobles at a low price. The grain in the cellar of Finxaburg was quickly replaced with barrels of beer, ale and fire wine, and piles of lees were piled up in the stable. The wines were stored in the cellar, waiting to be consumed or sold. Drinking can offset the expenses of the banquet, while selling can make a small profit by waiting for the price of the wine, but not now. After all, it is not only Baratheon who wants to turn grain into wine to sell, but only families like Baratheon have the capital to store wine and sell it on standby. Overall, Baratheon's small profits have opened up new industries and gained some reputation. Bachelor Qrizan, who handled the matter, was very happy and praised Leonor's wisdom whenever he met everyone, but these were quickly broken by another more explosive news. There was something going on at the martial arts competition that Robert went to Harrenburg to attend. Chapter 5: The Queen of Love and Beauty. The martial arts competition is a tradition in Westeros. This tradition is specially set up for knights and those who are aspiring to become knights. It is usually a group of people gathering together to perform swordsmanship through one-on-one or many-to-many, equestrian and gun art showdown. The basic rule of this conference is to be raised by the organizer to select a Queen of Love and Beauty, usually the daughter of the organizer. The Queen of Love and Beauty has 5 original guardians, and other participants can choose to challenge these 5 people and defeat them to get their place while challenging. Challenges will also occur between the 5 guardians until the final winner is determined. The champion has a privilege to give a garland representing the Queen of Love and Beauty to a girl he likes. Usually for showing love, the champion of this year's Harrenburg martial arts competition is Targaryen's Prince Rhaegar, who is said to be extremely handsome and defeated many knights, including Robert. But in the final flower offering, he skipped his original wife, Princess Dunn, and gave the garland representing love and beauty to Lyanna Stad, sitting with Rickard in the stands. In front of her fiancé Robert. Since Stephen's death, Robert has been a little depressed and addicted to alcohol and women. Now he is furious by Rhaega's attempt to do so. Although Uncle Habert stopped him and failed to get into an attack, he still threw down his plate and pushed a chair after returning to Fenxey Castle, causing a constant stir. To be honest, Leonor was a little disappointed with his brother and felt that he was not of good standing, but he could understand that Legia did a little too much. If he had changed, he would have to draw his sword on the spot and ask, "Is my sword not good?" In any case, Targaryen and Baratheon had another extra payment after returning to Windsbreath Castle. Uncle Habert quickly fell ill, and Robert felt unhappy here, so he simply took a boat to Eagle Nest City in the east. Old Habert failed to survive the winter years, died in the warm climate, and everyone buried him together, and the last person who could stop Robert also disappeared. All the work of the Windsnack Castle fell on Stannis, and Bachelor Crizin helped him with all his best. Leonor is also carefree. His nanny Michaela brings him a playmate named Vincent. Stormsky. The Westeros continent seems to have special care for illegitimate children. Depending on the region, illegitimate children have fixed surnames. For example, Du's surname in the north, Du's surname in the east, Shidden, and illegitimate children in Fengshan land are all surnamed Fengshan. Vincent is 8 years old this year. He is Michaela's eldest son. His father is unknown, but he should be an unknown nobleman, or even an unknown relative of Leonor. The nurse Michaela brought him to Leonor, hoping to be a sergeant. If he does well in the future, he might be a knight or something. Leonor also knew the little bit of lace in the aristocratic circle, so he didn't care much, just thought it was cultivated, and taught him how to read and arithmetic. Vincent was also an ambitious person. He did not bring any ridiculous country children's games. He honestly did whatever he asked him to do. He didn't learn quickly, but he won't be solid. Leonor was in a good mood, so he took him to the city, occasionally asking his coach Gavin Wilder to ask a knight to guard him and ride his pony to the outskirts of Fenxey Castle to see the forests and farmlands. Their time entered the 282nd year of the conquest. At the end of the spring year, just when Leonor was almost 4 years old, a black raven flew into the spire of Windbreath Castle and sent a letter to Bachelor Crizin. The content of the letter was a warning that something big happened in Genlin City just 2 days ago. Richard, Duke of Winterfell in the north, led his eldest son Brandon Stark to break into the king's Red Fort with his men, intending to murder Prince Rhaega, but he was caught by the king and most of his companions were killed on the spot. In order to punish Brandon Stark's crime, King Aerys II burned Richard, Duke of Stark in King's Landing, and sent people to pursue Robert Baratheon and Eddest Tucker. It is said that the two were involved in the conspiracy. This news was like a bolt from the blue, which shocked the old Bachelor Crizin and immediately responded to Stannis quickly. When Stannis heard the news, his reaction was not much different from that of the old Bachelor Crizin, only when Leonor unaware of the abnormality. The anti-royal parties have reached such an alliance between marriages. If King Aerys II does not react at all, it will be really unwise. That's why he wanted to burn Richard Stark to death. Wouldn't it be better to detain people and threaten the north? And why should I even bring Robert? No matter how bad it is, the Starks should be removed and targeted separately. It is normal to unite the majority and target small parts, and avoid the anti-royal party grouping. Are you afraid that Stark and Baratheon will not be united enough? Leonor was very confused about Aerys II's operations, but now it is not the time to solve it. I don't know who made the notice from Junlin, but it can be seen that the Baratheon family is in danger now. Leonor also ignored the taboos of age and directly proposed to respond at the family meeting. No need for his reminder. Stannis and Crizin also knew how to deal with it. The two of them were also confused, but it did not prevent them from sending spies to inquire about the news. At the same time, they strengthened martial law on Fenxey Castle, accelerated the collection of food and reserved the war. Soon they also got specific further news that what happened in King's Landing was real, but a fundamental reason why Brandon Stark broke into Red Fort is that his sister Lyanna Stark was kidnapped, and the person who abducted her was Targaryen's Crown Prince Rhaega. The prince gave the Garland of Love and Beauty to Lyanna at the spring martial arts competition that changed last year, which not only caused Robert to be furious, but also became a scandal among the nobles because he himself has a wife, Princess Elia Mardell from Sunji City, the Dun Desert in the southern region. Now that he forcibly abducted Lyanna Stark and locked her up in the southern Pure Land, he naturally made Brandon, the eldest son of the Stark family, furious. The eldest son Brandon rushed into the Red Fort Palace with his attendants Ethan Glover, Joffrey Mellister, Keller Regis and his companion Albert Elon. Unfortunately, Prince Ray at that time, if Gia is not here, the young people may have a little tone, angering King Aerys II. Aerys II ordered the guards to catch several people, except for Brandon and Ethan Glover being caught, including the future heir of Eagle Nest City. John Ellen's nephew and adopted son Albert, Aaron, was killed on the spot after the incident. Richard, the Duke of Stark, was still thinking about saving his son, and he asked Heiress II for a trial. The competition trial is a special duel in Westeros. It can be proposed when a dispute cannot be mediated. The winner is speechless and the loser is silent. Heiress II agreed on the spot, but after Richard put on his armor, he did not speak of martial ethics and directly ordered people to hang him up and burn him to death in a wildfire. Seeing his father die in front of him, the tied eldest son Brandon was in sorrow and angry that he hanged himself to death with a rope tied to him. In the end, no one survived except Brandon's entourage. Ethan Glover, King Heiress II, also sent people to inquire that Robert Baratheon and Ed Stark were at the Duke of Elan and their adoptive father, Eagle Nest City, so he sent a messenger to ask for people. It's over. Stannis and Crizin, who found out the information, felt that something was wrong. While Leonor was a little surprised and finally understood why Heiress II brought his brother with him, but what would Duke John Elling do? Leonor has no confidence in the noble's integrity. Even if John Ellen's nephew Albert died in this incident, brothers Robert and Ed Stark are his favorite adopted sons, but they are of power. Struggle is often something that both father and son can be abandoned. Leonor was worried, but his concern was unnecessary, because just when the information was in chaos, Robert, who had run away, had already returned on a boat. Chapter 6. Let the anger burn. Robert returned to the storm. He wore bloody armor and a black warhammer in his hand. After entering the castle, he announced to Stannis and Bachelor Creason, as well as Gavin Wilder, the coach of the Windsburg. He announced that he would lead the Stormland nobles to a coalition army of Stark, Elan and Tully, another rebellion against the Mad King Heiress II. There is no doubt that Robert's announcement attracted the opposition of young Stannis. Are you crazy? Of course I'm crazy, my dear brother. Can't you tell the Targaryen's dragon has regarded us as thorns in the eye and thorns in the flesh? Heiress II was crazy, and he used wildfire to bring Duke Record alive. Burned to death in Red Fort, and Brandon was watching it all, strangled to death by the ropes that bound him. Rob's response did not hesitate, and he talked endlessly. My great-grandfather, Leonor Baratheon, also raised an army against Targaryen, but how did he make my grandfather, Duke Mond, welcome Princess Leia of Targaryen? And my body is also flowing the dragon's blood. My father, Duke Stephen, chose the princess for Riga, and took risks to go out to sea, but he robbed my fiancée. I will revenge this revenge, and return blood to blood. The Iron Throne belongs to Targaryen, and in my body it is also Targaryen's blood flowed. Robert's words were loud and Stannis could not refute, and Leonor, another time traveler, opened his mouth wide. He did not expect that there was a precedent for his family's rebellion. Yes, the first Liano. The Duke of Liano, known as the Laughing Storm, also raised an army to resist Targaryen. The reason for the uprising was similar to that of Robert. The difference was that Duke Leonor's daughter was divorced by Prince Targaryen. At the time, the Targaryen royal family asked Prince Duncan to choose between the Iron Throne and love, and the other party resolutely abandoned the Iron Throne, which made the Baratheon family deeply feel ashamed. So the storm of laughter rose up in revenge because the Targaryen royal family made a mistake first. They did not receive public support, and eventually they could only quell the dispute and seize Duncan's position as crown prince. At the same time, they brought the royal princess Lilexp to the eldest son of the storm, Mond. This made Baratheon possess the royal bloodline. Because of this bloody relationship and the prelude to the old things, Robert was determined to follow his predecessors, and planned to go up and sit on the Iron Throne. His words also made Stannis, Bachelor of Creason, and even Sir Gavin Wilder argue this is the law of Westeros, and bloodline is above everything else. Robert has the right to inherit from his bloodline, and from the perspective of reason, Targaryen was injustice first. And Heiress II even violated the tradition of martial arts trial. The most important thing is that there are lessons from the past. This made people want to stop Robert from speaking, but he just watched the whole family go to the guillotine. Everyone was in awkward silence, and just as Robert became more and more angry, a silly voice came out. Then let the rage flames grow wild. Among the 7 kingdoms, the Running Wolf and the Eagle are already our allies, and there are also Tully from the Riverland as an auxiliary. Heiress II will not let us who can threaten the Iron Throne, especially the dragon has already. When it disappears, everyone looked at the sound and saw the 3-year-old radish head who had climbed onto the table at some point was talking. Who is it? If it was Leonor, a time traveler, Liano's analysis made everyone feel a little surprised. Only then did they realize that there was no giant dragon in the royal family. What did Targaryen conquer Westeros continent? It was a giant dragon that could spit out fire. Now the dragon has disappeared in the sky for decades. The Targaryen family is no longer as powerful as before, while Baratheon is friends with a wolf, eagle and silver sturgeon, and its power has aroused the fear of the Iron Throne. If the Iron Throne is relieved, it will inevitably take revenge. Then, if you don't rebel at this time, then when will you? Godfather forgives me. Stannis sighed lightly, and then his eyes became firm. Let the rage flames burn the prairie. Let the rage flames burn the prairie. Let the rage flames burn the prairie. The shouting was louder than the other, and Robert, who was originally angry, smiled at this, and looked at the head of carrots standing on the table and shouting with the team. Soon, the people of Fenxy Castle were mobilized, and the messengers of the notification were sent out. And the nobles of the entire Stormland received the order of call. The nobles who received the convening order slowly set off and came to the Fenxy Castle, where the people lined up for a meeting. Before the meeting began, Stannis, who was in charge of the reception, quickly completed the statistics of the guests, and only 3 nobles in the entire Stormland did not come. These 3 families are Cavalunton, Granton in Quan Chi City, and Fairhouse in Luomu City. It is obvious that these 3 families have already stood on the side of the royalist party at the meeting. Robert once again informed everyone of his rebellion, and asked all nobles to obey Baratheon as usual and send troops to help. Robert repeated the statement in Fenxy Castle, which was reasonable, and he also added a message, that is, when he returned from Eagle Nest City, he killed Mackay, the leader of the royal army in the east in Heiau Town. Grafts in the army of the Duke of John Ellen in the east and the Stark family in the north have been assembled and will move south soon. Hearing Robert's news, the nobles of the entire Stormland immediately agreed. It's not that they don't want to refuse, but that they can't refuse. After all, theirs is in Fenxy Castle. Jas Gavin Wild, with his soldiers, guarded outside the hall. As long as any lord dared to refuse Robert's recruitment, they would immediately rush into it and lift the rejection up the tower and throw it down. In this way, he was half rejected and half pleased. If he won, he would be regarded as a minister of the dragon, and if he lost, he would admit defeat and go home. Many lords were tied up in a chariot by Baratheon and began to send people to his family to summon troops. Soon, a unit of 5,000 people was summoned, and the spies that were spilled out also responded. The royal party, who will attend the meeting in the storm, are gathering troops in the direction of the Midsummer Hall. The Midsummer Hall is located at the junction of Dorne, River Bay and Stormland. It was originally a summer palace belonging to the royal family, but was later destroyed by royal fire. The previous article mentioned that Prince Duncan, who regretted the marriage of Baratheon, had tried to hatch dragon eggs here, but accidentally caused a fire, and eventually burned many nobles, including father and son, to death. Midsummer Hall tragedy. The fire not only caused the Targaryen population to wither, but also destroyed the once grand royal summer palace. Today, the ruins of the royal summer palace have become the gathering place for the royalists in the Stormland. After receiving the news, Robert took the army without hesitation. He set out early in the morning, but when the sun was just rising, news of victory came. Robert defeated the Cafulan family in Yalutin halfway to the summer hall at noon. The Granson family in Quan Chi City were defeated, and in the evening, Robert killed Count Fair in Luomu City. 3 wins a day. This is the first time Leonor discovered that it seems that in addition to drinking and playing with women, the young man has an illegitimate daughter, and it seems that his combat power is really good. However, his amazement was soon replaced by other ideas. Chapter 7: The Siege of Wind and Vast Castle. Under the rushing crowned stag, the Windsnack Castle is filled with various flags: the starry purple electric flag of the Tangdealine family, the black nightingale flag of the Cairn family, the 3-branch wheat ear flag of the Sirmi family, and the black and white of the Shiwan family swan. There are also a variety of flags, each of which represents a family's participation in the war in the Stormland. The latest additions are the Cavalan family's young deer devil leap flag, the Fair family's black and green crescent flag, and the Grandescent family's black lying lion flag. Yes, that's right, the 3 royalists who were just defeated by Robert, even the Fair family, who was killed by the head of the family, were led by Silver Axe Fair, the son of the former Earl of Fair, and joined the father-killing enemy, Lobo, under whose command the nobles in the feudal era, the nobles who have the mission of loyalty in legend, are so casual. Leonor even had the illusion that the army of 3 families, including Cavalan, gathered in Shengsha Hall not because they supported King Aerys II, but because they ran the wrong way and thought they were gathering in Fenxy Castle. When they saw Robert facing each other, they probably mistook him for the welcome, but they were beaten up by Robert. They were able to live up to the boss's face and to cover up their IQ that they didn't even recognize, so they went through the motions. Pretend to be back on track, damn it. It's so absurd. The so-called 3 wins a day are just like funny. Leonor was full of complaints about the feudal army, but he also clearly realized that the world was still in the era of feudal division, and it seemed like that was it. The so-called aristocratic forces are also grass on the wall, and the wind blows both sides. Just as Leonor's complaints came laughing in his ears, but his brother Robert was pulling Cavlant, Grandison and the new Earl of Fair to drink and tease each one. There was a custom woman in her arms. Seeing the so-called nobles embrace customs women, Leonor couldn't bear to look at them anymore, so he shook his head and left. After Fengxi rested and recuperated, more troops came to join in the next few days. All of them were unknown nobles, nobility in the corners, hedge knights who were seeking jobs, that is, knights without fiefdoms. No matter how many people came, Robert accepted it all. Leonor just watched silently, watching Robert form a less focused army of complex elements such as customary women, down-and-out beggars and strong peasants, and set out to the south. Robert only left a small number of troops for the Winch Castle, but he was quite conscientious because he went to the south to relieve the worries. Now the war has begun, and just as Robert conquered the princes of the storm, King Aerys II of Tangerian had issued an edict to the whole country. The Mardell family in Sunji City, the Dun Desert in the south, and the Tyrier family in the Huenda High Court were all on the way to bring troops. Robert went south to eliminate the threat from the nearby River Bay royalists to the Stormland. It only took 1 day. After only 1 day, he was so hammered by the enemy that he couldn't find the north. Even the main force of the Tyrier family in Huendi did not arrive. The vanguard of Landeo Tali beat him to flee in Senchu Beach. Leonor was a little desperate when he heard the news. He felt that his brother had conscience and ability, but not much. Whether Baratheon can sit on the Iron Throne, as in the plot, is really unpredictable. He didn't have much time to complain about Robert now because the old man wanted Senshutin to lose. When the deserter brought the news back to Fengxi Fort, the Tyrier family of the High Court followed the main force of the Tyrier family, robbed the noble territory along the way, causing their marching speed to be delayed. Taking advantage of this time, Stannis ordered people to reject the refugees and strengthen the defense of Fengxi Castle. Leonor either sat in the study and took Vincent to read a book, or followed the hall to listen, suppressing the lively and rambunctious Renly and not allowing him to cause trouble to others. Others can't help much, and their greatest efforts are to be a well-behaved and quiet child, and to make other noisy children quiet and well-behaved. The eldest brother Robert left very little troops, and Stannis had to recruit forces from the refugees and sent people to count the food in the warehouse. The problem is very serious. Although the warm spring came early last year, the Fengxi Fort's warehouse was not full of food, and it was not even halfway. However, several large cellars were full of wine, and the stables were filled with lees for feeding chickens. After learning about the situation, Stannis immediately sent people out of the city to grab food and sent a ship north to buy it. Although he tried to make up for it urgently, it was still a pity. Before the granary of Fengxi Castle was filled, a green-bottomed gold rose flag floated on the cliff slope outside Fengxi Castle, and under the flag were various other emblem flags, all of which were the army of major nobles in the River Bay. The army under the flag was spreading to the sky, and the Tyrier family's troops were far superior to the civilians in the city. They were equipped with plate armor and spears. With the sound of people, they surrounded the castle on the sea cliff in groups, not only on land, but also on the sea surface. The other bow of the ship was the purple-bottomed grape flag, which was the Earl of Qing Island, Pixar Red. The flag of the Wen family. The Red Wen family was a vassal of the Tyrier family. Their fief, Qing Island, is famous for producing the best wines and is known to everyone in all countries apart from wine. They are the best sailors and captains, with a fleet that is strong enough to rival the royals. In this way, there were many soldiers and many generals, and the entire Fengxi Fort cut off contact with the outside world in desperation. Everyone hiding in the Windsniffle Castle, including Stannis, had an indomitable fighting spirit because everyone knows that if the enemy creates such a big battle, if the city is broken, it will definitely be plundering, and then there will be no one left under the threat of death. Everyone raised their minds and then devoted themselves to the tense and fierce battle to defend the city. A few days before the siege, the soldiers of the Tyrier family's river bend outside the city did not launch an attack, but went to the nearest imperial forest to cut down trees. At this time, the siege battle must be completed by siege equipment, otherwise the soldiers would not even be able to climb the city wall. On the 6th day, the soldiers of Huon began to attack, carrying the made siege equipment, which is some simple wooden ladders. When the ladder approached the wall of Fengxi Castle, the soldiers in the River Bay couldn't wait to climb up, and then they were soaked by the boiling oil on the top of the city that they cried and scattered like a swarm. After staying for a while, the soldiers of Qing gathered under the whip of the knights, but the wooden ladder had been pulled away by the soldiers of Fengxi Fort on the city wall, so they cut down trees and made wooden ladders again, brought wooden ladders and archers, and tried to climb the city wall again, but the soldiers on the top of the city pushed the wooden ladder away, and fought back with bows, arrows, rocks, and boiling oil. Finally defeated the enemy. In short, it is difficult to break through the technical capabilities of the army in the rivers and bays. The most effective way to siege battles can only be reflected in one place, that is, consumption. The army in Huendi surrounded the land by land, and the warships stopped all the ships entering the city, so they isolated the Fengxi castle from the world, waiting for the people in the city to use up all their food and strength, and finally climbed the city wall. The arduous battle of attrition to defend the city began in the first few months. The army from Huendi came to attack the city, but in a later stage, it simply did not attack the city, and it only changed to besieged city. Their soldiers raised a bonfire at night, held a grand banquet, and roasted the stolen cattle and sheep. The soldiers and civilians in Fengxi Fort could only look at the fire from afar and swallow their saliva and chew on the old bread in their hands. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Rescue. While guarding the city, Leonor took Renly and Vincent, accompanied by her nurse Mikola, and hid in the dark. Kill the elderly, weak, women and children are of no use at the top of the city, and they can only passively wait for the winner in the ground. Kill at the beginning. There were some bread, biscuits, milk, fruits and jerky, but later there were only breads and water left, and even the bread began to be mixed with wheat bran and wood chips. Later, there was not even bread, and it was replaced by inexplicable mucus. Leonor smelled a strong smell of alcohol from it and ate a lot of grains that looked like wheat and millet. Knowing that it should be wine lees more than a year ago, he suggested that Master Cleason make wine. Since then, there have been many lees in Fengxi Castle. People do not eat this thing, but are used to feed livestock and chickens and ducks. Now even the wheat granules that chickens and ducks eat have already entered the entrance, and the city has entered a desperate situation. Renly shouts hungry every day. In fact, it was not only Renly who was hungry, but even Leonor. At first, he had a few carefully preserved biscuits, but after feeding them to Renly, there was nothing left. Renly always thought he had something to eat and always wanted to come over and search, but he pushed it out impatiently and asked his nurse Mikola to take good care of him. He could only hide in the earth kildies. In order to pass the time, he could only sit upright and visualize, use his thoughts to promote his blood flow, and read the Taoist scriptures in his mind when he was bored. This Tao Sutra can be regarded as an alternative encyclopedia of the Yangshan world. In addition to the cultivation content of preaching sects, it also contains various miscellaneous knowledge, which is similar to the starting the heavenly things and Dream Creek Bishop in the real world kind. Leonor was bored when he was idle, so he passed the time by reading the contents of the Taoist scriptures. He first skipped the 2 chapters about astronomy and geography. After all, the geographical phenomena of the Yangshan world are not applicable to Westeros. He used to mainly watch how to practice Taoist arts, but now he sees the miscellaneous arts, which are also called alchemy by people in the Yangshan world. The full name of Fengxi is Fengxi, also known as the art of all crafts, covering all aspects of food, clothing, housing and transportation. For example, how to cultivate grains, how to open fields to dry salt, how to find hardware, how to smell and purify, how to forge swords, etc. The swords in the Yangshan world are extremely outstanding. Whether it is the blood patch steel called Xiangang or the pattern steel, the Taoist scriptures tell you how to train. In addition to food, clothing, housing and transportation, there are also engineering and medicine, such as how to build siege equipment, how to allocate gunpowder thunder, and how to build city walls. Leonor had wanted to find the magic of Fengxi Castle to build a city, but in the Daojing section, it was mentioned, use black clay to make bricks into kills, kill prisoners or evil beasts, and sacrifice them with blood. Evil spirits, and can produce black gold brick. The black gold bricks are as hard as steel and as flat as mirrors. When the city is built with glutinous rice mortar, the city walls will be indestructible. They will not fear evil swords and swords. And the purple thunder gunpowder will not be broken. The alchemist in the Yangshan world also created gunpowder, and the power of the most advanced purple thunder gunpowder explosion is no worse than that of modern TNT-type gunpowder. Some Taoist masters can use their thoughts to penetrate gunpowder powder into the talisman paper, metal and wood, and refine them into powerful thunder talismans. It is said that when a thought moves, they can explode and subdue demons. Good guy Leonor felt like he had discovered a new world. It turned out that the reward of the system was also Goldfingers, so he almost missed these fantasy black technologies in the Earthkill. Leonor, who discovered a new world, began to absorb knowledge hungrily and thought about how to copy those fantasy black technologies into this world. He remembered that there were also some black technologies such as wildfire in this world, and he had to do it well. Preparation for a response. The war in Finksy Castle outside is still continuing. After the spring year, it should be the summer year, but unfortunately it suddenly turned into winter again. The wind on the beach was as cold as a knife, but the siege of the Terrier family was still not removed. The knights in fur and plate armor were eating and drinking at the campfire, while the flags of golden roses and purple-bottomed grapes were patrolling back and forth on the sea. But except for the first few months, they did not attack in the days afterwards. This gave Stannis a buffer, and he tried to appease everyone in the city and suppress a rebellion after the food was exhausted. Sir Gavin Wilder, the coach of the Windsburg, tried to lead people to open the city gate and surrender. But fortunately he was discovered in advance. Stannis wanted to kill the traitor and threw his head out of the city, but was dissuaded by Master Crizin. Stay him. Maybe he can make some contributions to us, and our lees are almost finished. Master Cleasen's old eyes flashed with an inexplicable light, firm and terrible. Master Cleasen's eyes were terrible, but Stannis agreed that he could do anything in despair. Fortunately, the terrible thing did not happen, because on the night when the food was almost gone, a black sailboat passed through the Redwyne family's fleet blockade, bringing a full ship of dried fish and onions to the Windsburg, causing a sensation in the city. When Stannis walked through the crowd that warmly welcomed the food and came to the edge of the sea cliff, he saw a gray-bearded bald man standing in front of the black sailboat in the cold wind. So he stepped forward to have a conversation. The man named Davos, from the flea nest in King's Landing City. He was a businessman in the narrow sea. He encountered a purchasing ship driven out by the Redwyne fleet at the sea. He heard that the Winch Castle was surrounded and decided to send it. Come to food and support. Stannis knew Davos, and it could even be said to be well known. This lord is a maritime smuggler wandering between the Westeros continent and the 9 major trading city-states. He even heard that he had sold weapons to savages outside the Great Wall of Desperate. If it were the case that he had met this smuggler in the past, Stannis would have ordered him to be arrested without saying a word. But today the situation is different. Redwyne's fleet is still on the sea, and the army in the riverside is still surrounded here. Regarding the gift from Davos, Stannis decided to entertain him in the name of his friend and let him live in the Wind Bowl. As for his ship, the Black Beth stayed, waiting for the onion and dried fish to be unloaded. Facing Stannis' arrangement, Davos chose to accept it safely and stayed in Finksy Castle. Another month followed, and the severe cold slowly passed, and with Davos sending dried fish and onions, the crisis in Finksy Castle quietly passed. Since then, the 283 years of the conquest, and the summer year has come. Late in February of summer, the temperature began to rise, and Finksy Castle finally ushered in hope. After a year the Raven flew back from the north and brought news of victory. Robert Baratheon was lucky that he was not caught up and killed by Lando Tally, but joined the army of Stark and the Tully family in Ringing Bell Town with the mighty anti-King army. Robert broke into King's Landing City, and has now been sent to the Iron Throne by many families with the news of victory. The Redwyne fleet, which was blocked at sea, began to evacuate and disappear, while the land troops in the River Bay were also attacked. The army from the north had already gone south to support, and the leader was not Robert, but his sworn brother Ed Stark. He held up the wolf banner high and led the knights in the northern border to completely disperse the army in the River Bay, so that Finksy Fort, which had been surrounded for a year, was finally released on the day of lifting the siege. The entire Finksy Fort was in full bloom. Stannis led his soldiers to chase and chop the enemy, and plundered the military funds that the people in the river beside were too late to take away. After some hungry soldiers rushed into the enemy's camp, they carried the grilled lamb chops on the spot and ate them. Very much as the pursuit of death unfolded, the city cheered, and Leonor also brought Lamley. The two of them walked out of the Earthkill with a pale face, facing the scorching sun above their heads, as if they were a different world. Chapter 9: The Laughter of Judgment. After the victory of chasing the death of the North, Finksy Fort held a victorious banquet. After being surrounded for a year originally, the guests at this banquet should have led their troops to support Ed Stark, but this Duke Stark, who had lost his father and elder brother, had no intention of succeeding as the guardian of New North after he conveyed the orders from the army and the North. He immediately led several knights to continue south. Stannis was a little displeased with this, but said nothing. Stannis presided over a celebration banquet, invited the nobles from the North to attend, and gave a greeting after everyone had enough food and drink, thanking the subjects for their support and the reinforcements from the North for their timely arrival. Leonor felt that this old man was not suitable for this kind of scene, but the heroic and loud laughter of the nobles in the North made up for the shortcomings. He was also satisfied with cutting a roasted lamb leg with a knife and using tenderness. The fragrant and refreshing mutton came to visit the Woodin Temple, which was empty for almost a year. Just as the banquet was about to end successfully, a noise suddenly came, but a man rushed into the hall under the obstruction of the guards. Davos, who rushed into the banquet, knelt in front of many nobles, told Stannis in the main position that he had given his merits to the supplies at the critical moment of Fengxi Castle, begging for rewards. With a humble attitude, Leonor put down the knife and asked the nurse next to him to take care of Renly beside him. He sat on Stannis' left hand, looking at Davos, who was extremely humble below, but he felt a little uncomfortable because he realized that Davos had great kindness to Fengxi Castle. He should not be so humble, but he also noticed that everyone in the room looked as usual, and some even looked funny as if they were watching the show, and they couldn't help but feel melancholy. The same thing is said, nobility and humility, and the rules are like this, but are the rules right? Leonor felt a little sad when facing the rules of another world. But Stannis beside him spoke. Davos, my forgiveness of your sins is my greatest reward. Dear Lord Stannis, I want to be a knight. Davos, who was kneeling on the ground, showed no doubt great courage. But it made the Storm nobles unhappy. There are many types of knights, including hedge knights who work in a wandering and working, oath knights who have labor relations with the nobles, and also, who are almost equivalent to the nobles and have personal territory. Davos claimed at the banquet that he wanted to become a knight. No doubt that he would become a knight of vow or a hired knight, but a wealthy knight with a fiefdom. The proprietary knights are dependent on the nobles, and the nobles are a circle of family lineage theory. The nobles attending the meeting did not like Davos' remarks and felt that smuggling sellers were not qualified to become knights or nobles. They waited for Stannis' ruling and waited for Stannis to order the smuggler to be beaten out or sentenced to death. They felt that Stannis, who had always been serious, could do it while everyone was waiting. Stannis in the main position spoke. His words were cold and unkind. Leave. Davos, while I have not changed my mind yet, pursue your smuggling crimes. If you insist on asking for my reward, then I will also settle your guilt. A just knight must not have any sins. And I don't need a knight without hands. Under Stannis' old-fashionedness, although very limited, is still hidden in his gratitude to Davos. He asked Davos to leave, and if he insisted on claiming compensation, he would be held responsible for smuggling, and according to the law, he would cut off his hands. Leonor was stunned when he heard it next to him, because according to the plot story in his memory, his second brother should only cut off the other party's fingers. Why did he cut off his hands now? The silence of the room was so quiet that even Davos had no sound. He mustered up great courage to come here, not to lose his hands. It wouldn't be a big deal if it was just a pair of hands to exchange for the fiefs inherited from generation to generation, but the problem was that Stannis on the opposite side had no promise. The words of the nobles are like storms on the sea, and they leave as they say they come, and leave as they say they want. Just as Davos was hesitating in his heart, Leonor saw the situation stalemate, but he had a thought in his heart, because he felt that Davos was a talent and the benefactor of Fengxi Castle, so he stood on the chair and spoke. Stannis, can I make a judgment? Stannis turned his head and looked at his younger brother in surprise. What you up to? Let me judge this future Knights Guild. Leonor asked. Stannis glanced at the many guests in the hall, but he didn't know what he was thinking about, so he asked, how do you plan to make a decision? The eyes of the entire living room were attracted, and Leonor saw this and cleared his throat slightly. I have heard a saying about the Lannister family in the West, called Lannister, you will be compensated for your debts. For this purpose, the Lion eliminated the Reyes family in Casstone to punish their infidelity. Warn the world about the price of offending the nobles, Mr. Davos, you lend a helping hand in the critical moment of wind sniffle. Baratheon will not forget this kindness, but at the same time you are also guilty of smuggling. In view of this, I will sentence you. You are guilty. Hearing Leonor's words, the whole room was talking, and the last sentence, almost like a sentence in the execution ground, made the people in the field even more intense. They were wondering what this little Baratheon would do. It was like Lannister dealing with Rey as that Davos died, but Baratheon would also be called ungrateful. or just forgive Davos directly, which will offend the nobles of the Stormland. Even Davos, who was kneeling in the hall, held his breath and waited for the next words. But you have a power, come on. Start a trial against me. Who was ruling? Leonor's words surprised Davos below, his face full of shock, and the nobles who were talking in the hall exploded with a blast. Quiet, Stannis spoke loudly, and the banquet hall under the town was roaring, and then he whispered to his younger brother standing on the chair next to him, "Is this what you want to do?" "Yes," Leonor nodded, and after Stannis understood, he was speechless for a while, and finally said to Davos below, "Davos, thank my brother." Davos, kneeling on the ground, looked up at the little boy on the seat, and felt that the other person's figure was extremely majestic, and his brown eyes were even filled with tears of joy. "How dare I? Don't procrastinate like this." Stannis' tone became dissatisfied, and Davos quickly wiped away his tears when he saw this. "I propose a competition trial. According to tradition, as long as he proposes a competition, he can decide whether it is right or wrong based on his winning or losing. I accept it. I admit defeat." Leonor happily admitted defeat, and then couldn't help laughing out loud. His laughter was wild, making the people in the room, including Stannis, feel inexplicable. Only Davos was grateful and tears were crying. Stannis only felt that the laughter of his younger brother beside him was a little harsh, but then he had to announce his reward. "Your sin is clear, Davos. Now in repaying your kindness, I, Stannis, granted you a knight in the name of Baratheon, and granted you good fields of the Horn of the Wind's territory." When he heard Stannis' reward, the nobles of the Stormland sitting in the banquet hall were all unchanging, while the knights from the north praised him, and Davos, who received the reward, kowtowed again. Thank you, Lord Stannis, and thank you, Lord Leonor." During the banquet, only Stannis, who was sitting on the right hand of his clothes, pulled the corner of his clothes and said in a very low voice, "Why do you have to be now?" Chapter 10 Blacksmith. Bachelor Kristen felt that it was completely out of place to give Davos territory in public. After all, there were many nobles at the banquet, and some even participated in the arduous city detention with Stannis, and some came from the north to help expel the siege of the Tyrion family. Although Davos' boat of onions and dried fish is very important, it is ultimately due to inequality and can be rewarded in private. And one more thing is that Stannis, as the second son, has no right to reward territory. The power to reward territory belongs to the Lord. The current Lord of the Stormland is Robert, which is considered usurpation. Bachelor Kristen had some considerations, but Stannis felt it was unnecessary because he felt that Baratheon had successfully rebelled. Now, his eldest brother Robert was destined to be king, and Fancy Castle naturally had to be on his own. "I use my things to reward, and I also need to look at other people's faces." Stannis did his own thing and ignored Bachelor Kristen's advice. Bachelor Kristen has no other use except persuasion. He can also expect the old man to do anything. He pointed at Stannis' nose and scolded him as a fool, and then left. It is impossible. The political attitude of the bachelor sent by Zuchen. It is neutral and can only make plans for the Lord, not make decisions on behalf of the Lord. The reward banquet passed, and although the nobles in the Stormland were dissatisfied, they could not say anything in person. Soon, new orders came from King's Landing, and Stannis was asked to go north to King's Landing to form a new royal navy, and pursue the remnants of Targaryen who fled to Dragonstone Island. As Baratheon's second son, he was born to obey his brother and was engaged in the family's sailing, which is also considered a specialty. Davos, who was newly promoted to the Knights, also went with him because of his reputation in the maritime smuggling circle and his ability to manipulate ships through the Red Wind fleet to blockade the Windsweep Castle. Everyone is busy with their own affairs, and Leonor also began to pick up his books again, intending to grow and develop slowly, waiting for the day to stand on this world stage. Because in the past year, he no longer only focused his attention on magical knowledge, but hoped to broaden his knowledge, especially in science and technology. For this reason, he took Vincent to the blacksmith shop in Fancy Castle, intending to see the casting and forging techniques of this world war should be indispensable in his future. And technology directly affects the success or failure of war. The one who manages the blacksmith shop in Fancy Castle is a soldier named Noy. He has broad muscles and has heard that he was injured while chasing the army in Huon. When Leonor found him in the blacksmith shop, he was drunk, with a pungent smell of alcohol and sweat all over his body, sleeping on the ground next to the anvil. His right hand bandaged with a gray cloth was leaking out blood and yellow water. The guards responsible for guiding Leonor tried to wake him up, but he didn't move, and even looked abnormally flushed, so he said to Leonor, he was so drunk, "I'll go find water." The guards wanted to find water to wake Donner, But Leonor saw something wrong. Wait, he looks a little different, he seems to have a little fever. Leonor endured the odor, stepped forward and put it on Donner's forehead with his hand. And then touched his forehead. The temperature was indeed very high. The guards who led the way and guard looked at the 4-year-old noble master who actually put his hands on the blacksmith's smelly face, and then heard him say that someone had a fever, and immediately looked at him like a fool. Fever? He's not on fire. Leonor realized that he overestimated the level of the people in this world, so he stopped explaining to the guards, as it would bring out more unclear terms. He asked the guards to help him lift Donner, who was drunk, and put it on the hay in the corner of the blacksmith's shop. He carefully looked at the wound with yellow water flowing on his left arm, and confirmed that he had a high fever due to the wound infection, so he asked the guards to go help make some willow branches, clean water and pots. He remembered that the Taoist scripture mentioned that decocting willow's water can clear heat, detoxify, reduce swelling and relieve pain. According to modern medicine, willows contain salicylic acid, which can fight against the inflammation of colds and fevers. However, he still overestimates the world productive forces. The winter year has just passed, and now it is the season for willow trees to sprout. Willow branches are easier to work with, and clean water is barely enough, but it is difficult to find pots to cook medicine. Donner's blacksmith's workshop only has some wooden cups and clay pots containing unknown substances. In the end, the guards borrowed a pot of clay from a nearby house, added less clear water and peeled willow branches to cook. During the process of boiling willow branches, Donner had a tendency to be awake, but his mind was blurred. He shouted that he had a headache and his hands were sore, and asked someone to get him some poppy milk to drink. Poppy milk is a unique medicine in Westeros. Leonor heard from Clarissa that it is a liquid extracted from flowers and fruits, analgesic drugs, and is generally destructive to plants of the same name on the earth. The role of human mind. Leonor had no poppy milk on his hands. He waited for the willow branches to fry, poured a bowl and let the guards pour Donner directly, and then used the remaining potion to clean the wound on his left arm. Finally, band him with his own handkerchief. When everything was done, the sun was about to set outside, and Donner, who had taken medicine, died of sleep on the haystack, and had no intention of waking up. Leonor decided to come to him tomorrow, so he took Vincent with him. Leave with the guards. When he left the blacksmith's shop, he was blocked by a woman with patches in clothes. He was a little confused, but the guards who were accompanying him suddenly realized that they took out the pot of decocting medicine from the blacksmith's shop and returned it to her, and explained at the same time, "This is borrowing her jar, it's just a jar." Leonor looked at the woman with the patch of clothes and was amused and laughed. The woman actually stopped herself for a jar. If she had changed to another noble, she would have to whip it up. The woman who took the can and left with a look of alert, while the guard who led the way twitched the corner of his mouth after hearing his words. "Master Leonor, this jar is perhaps one of the most valuable things in her family." Leonor looked absent after hearing this, and he was a little disbelief. "How much does that jar cost?" "It could be 1 silver deer, or 2 silver deer, or even more." "So expensive?" Leonor was surprised. He learned the world's currency conversion from Clizon. This world has 3 main currencies: golden dragon, silver deer and bronze star. 1 golden dragon is exchanged for 17 silver deer and 1 silver. The deer is exchanged for 32 bronze stars. Those who set up such a conversion system do not have a pitfall, but do it intentionally, because the people do not understand and will ask for help from literate people, and businessmen. Officials and priests can take the opportunity to make a profit. Leonor did not know the income and expenses of ordinary people, but he heard Vincent say that before Fanxi Castle, 3 pumpkins could be bought in a copper plate in the city, which was enough for a family of 3 to eat for 1 to 2 days, and an ordinary clay pot actually costs a family of 3 for 1 or 2 months. "Isn't it a bit expensive?" "Expensive?" The guard looked confused. He had no idea about cheapness or expensiveness, and only knew that he could afford it or could not afford it. "May I have your name?" "My name is Dorit. From today on, follow me and be my guard." Leonor needed someone to help him understand the social level of the world. He remembered that the Taoist scriptures contained the skills of burning pottery and porcelain. Those are all techniques that can make a fortune. "Then my job." Dorit showed joy and couldn't help but hesitate. He had no idea about many things, but it did not mean that he was stupid. He didn't know what the meaning of being Leonor's guard. "I'll go and tell Sir Cotton Aponless." Chapter 11. Donald Noy. Sir Cotton Aponless is the new coach of the Windsburg after Gavin Wilder, who rebelled in the siege. He is responsible for the protection of the Windsburg and the training of ordinary soldiers. All the soldiers are under his management. Leonor wrote a letter to the new coach when he returned to the castle, and he successfully took the soldier named Dorrit to his disciple the next day. He was about to ask Dorrit to continue to take him and Vincent to find Donner, but he didn't expect the other party to come to him. The blacksmith he had treated with willow water has recovered his health, and his figure is indeed as strong as the legendary one. His black eyes were grateful, and he knelt down to express his gratitude when he saw Leonor. Leonor Sharon was bowed by the blacksmith and asked him to stand up. "You don't need to kneel down, Mr. Noy. You were injured to defend Fanxi Castle, but don't drink alcohol after being injured next time. It's not good for your health." Although Leonor was far away, he could still smell the alcohol on the other party's body. He gave a word of advice, but this sentence made the already grateful man Donner cried directly. Leonor couldn't tell what the blacksmith's stares mean. "What's wrong with you?" Donner stood up, cried so hard that he blew his nose again, and wiped the sticky and shiny snot on the torn straw sandals under his feet, crying in a muddy voice, "So kind, you are so kind, Lord Leono. I have never seen a kind nobleman as you. You are so young, and you will definitely be a nobleman in the future. What can I do to repay you?" The word aristocrat has never been related to mercy. "I just can't help you," Leonor complained in his heart, but looking at Donald's tearful expression, he thought he was serious, so he nodded. "I have received your gratitude and I want to learn about ironwork if you want." Iron smashing thing." Donna, who was crying so hard, was stunned after hearing this. What did a noble do to understand the coolie doing such an inferior talent do? Although Donner was a blacksmith, he never thought how sacred his work was. Although he sometimes looked at the hammers and warhammers he made, and how hard it was to pound them from ore to such a level, thinking about the life that is always stinking and unattended, he feels that he has had enough. People always talk about weapons such as warhammers and swords, and talk about how brave the people who wield warhammers and swords are, but they never care about what kind of people who cast the warhammers and swords are. Donner believes that except for those poor people who have no food to eat, no one would want to know about the blacksmith, and no fool would think about how to become a blacksmith. Now a nobleman said he wanted to become a fool, so Leonor looked at Donner, who had been silent for a long time. "Do you feel something is wrong?" Donner, his heavy voice recalled the strong blacksmith's ingenuity, so he quickly shook his head. No, respected Master Leonor, if you want to know about the blacksmith, I can tell you in detail, from the mining of ore, to screening, melting, crafting, and grinding. I will take everything I know. I'll tell you, because you saved my life." The blacksmith Donner's words were extremely earnest, and Leonor once again took his words seriously. "Then let's start with the ore. Where does our ore come from now? Where is the quality good and where is the quality bad?" Our ore source is mainly two types. One is the ore excavated locally in the Stormland, such as the copper ore in Tongman Town, and the iron ore in Crown Fort. The iron ore in Crown Fort is very different. Okay, it can only be used to build farm tools because they are hard and brittle. What about the other one? The other type is the iron ore produced in the Iron Islands and Dorne. Those iron ore are extremely excellent, and the swords created are not only hard but also flexible. Can you see the quality of those ores? How do you see it? As long as I can see those ores, I can tell them how good or bad they are, just like the size of those women's breasts. What? Leonor almost suspected that his ear was wrong, and when Donner saw this, he hurriedly explained, that, Master Leonor, I don't know how to describe it, but I can tell the quality of iron ore and swear in the name of the blacksmith. The blacksmith in Donner's mouth does not refer to his profession, but to the blacksmith of one of the seven gods. He is considered to be the source of all crafts and labor. The farmers and craftsmen worship him, and his monks are also active in the craftsmen's. Among the group, Leono thought about it and changed his question. Which place do you think is the best forging technology in this world? School City. Donner's answer was not hesitant. Although blacksmiths mastered a skill, they were not literate and had very limited cognition. Their skills were not even comparable to those of the Kaha people in the continent of Ursus, let alone the bachelors in the School City, and there were 7 more. Great monks of the blacksmith of the Church of God. Leonor learned about the forging technical level of Fanxi Castle through Donner, and found that the technical level of Fanxi Castle in his hometown is really not very good. He dared not make assertions on a large scale in the entire Westeros, and even the east of Essos, but the introduction of Donner alone, not only did he not master the technology of steel making, but he even created some ingenuity. All things are very bad, such as iron products such as needle sawing pots, I'll rely on the import of the trade city-state Kahal. Leonor sighed at the backwardness of this world and was sincerely happy because the above-mentioned technologies are recorded in the Taoist scriptures. As long as they are operated properly, he can easily transform these technologies into wealth and power. He did what he wanted. He was the first to bet on the metal smelting area, so he asked Donner, who belongs to your blacksmith shop? He needed a laboratory and assistant, and Donner and his blacksmith shop were very suitable, but before that, he had to determine whether the blacksmith shop and Donner himself were subordinate to others. Although the Seven Gods Church and Kingdom laws prohibit slavery, personal dependence still exists in different forms such as servants and grooms. It's my own. Donner raised his head, extremely sure. You have participated in the war to defend Fengxi Castle, and are the leader of the Stormland and do not belong to anyone, right? Leonor nodded slightly. Yes, Leonor is more satisfied that Donald is not an affiliate. Then do you want to be a knight? Leonor's problem was no less than a bolt from the blue, hitting the blacksmith Donner's heart, which shocked him. He looked up and looked at the Master Fengxi Castle above with an incredible gaze. Leonor did not let Donner wait. As the third child of my family, although I don't know what the future will be, I have the right to enthrone the knight. If you are willing to be my follower, I will. Before Leonor finished speaking, he saw the strong blacksmith Donner below kneeling down and snatching the ground with his head. I don't have a fiefdom for you. Leonor also made it clear. In fact, a knight can be done as long as he is a knight. The position of a knight is not very valuable, and a knight with a fiefdom is different. I am willing, Master Leonor, swear in the name of the seven gods, I am willing to dedicate my loyalty and everything to you, just to have a place by your side. Donner pressed his forehead tightly against his head. On the ground, he pleaded with words and sentences, and Leonor was also moved by his sincerity and solemnly stood up and walked to him. Donald Noy, there will always be your place by my side, and swear in the name of Baratheon. Chapter 12 Iron Prophet. In this way, Donald Noy of Fengxi Castle became Leonor's first follower in this world, and took his blacksmith shop industry to Leonor's name. Leonor has had his first industry since time traveling, and the first thing he did was to personally inspect the situation of this industry. Despite the introduction of Donner, he went to the blacksmith shop in person to watch Donner's work on the spot. Donner's daily work is to repair and build weapons for the soldiers of Fengxi Fort. Although he was lonely and drunk, no one asked him about it. But in fact, his blacksmith shop's business is not bad because his skills are good. In the entire Windsburg, Donner's blacksmith craftsmanship was one of the best, and even the warhammer used by Leonor's brother Robert was created by him. The reason why he looks down and hard is that he is worried about his situation. Yes, Donner looked down on the profession of blacksmiths, but instead advocated the noble knights. He was depressed all day long, did not get married and started a family, and devoted all his income to buying drunks and prostitutes. Now Leonor's storage makes him feel that he has found a new direction in his life. He held an iron hammer and expressed his hope to Leonor, who went to the blacksmith shop to create a sword for him. I have no money, I can't read, and I can't ride a horse. I can only do this for you, Lord Leonor, Donner pleaded. Yes, Leonor accepted Donner's request with a smile, and then followed him to ask questions. When he turned on the furnace and asked Dord and Vincent to help him, Donner had two helpers, although one of them was very small, and could only do some helping with things and pulling the bellows. Even so, it was enough to make him feel much easier. He had the time to answer some of Leonor's questions, and told him his tricks to distinguish or the process of Donner creating the sword was the technology brought to Westeros by the Andals, which was to select suitable iron ore, then melt and refine, and then hammer and mold. The quality of the sword made in this way depends heavily on the carbon content of the iron ore itself. Good luck is the pig iron sword with extremely high hardness but easy to break, and bad is the hard iron sword without bones. As for whether it can produce a steel sword, just look at whether the blacksmith among the seven gods will give her face. After learning about Donner's roughly forging process, Leonor asked about the price of iron ore and learned that an iron island ore of equal weight of living people would require 100 silver deer, and an excellent iron sword could be sold 100 to 200 silver deer, and one iron chest armor can sell for 300 to 400 silver deer. An excellent steel sword is priced at 800 silver deer. As for the steel full-body armor, it is the same as the Valyrian steel sword. It is impossible to buy it on the market. The nobles will only keep it as a family heirloom. Good guy, Leonor is just a good guy. The ore in the Iron Islands is of excellent quality. He doesn't understand the iron content inside, but just calculates it by half the iron content. A living person has 120 kilograms, And when heavy iron ore can produce about 60 kilograms of iron, an iron sword can use up to 4 to 5 kilograms of iron. 60 kilograms of iron can calculate the loss of 10 kilograms, and 5 can produce 5 iron swords. 1 iron sword is 100 silver deer, and 5 are 500 silver deer. Ores are counted as the labor cost is at most 200 silver deer, and there are more than twice the interest rate. If 5 steel swords can be used, the profit margin will increase by dozens of times. No wonder Guanzhong and Seng Hongyang wanted to nationalize the 2 items of iron and salt, which was so profitable. This business must be done. Once it is done well, Cheng Wang and Chengba will have the foundation. Leonor was full of motivation and began to study the smelting equipment in the Donner blacksmith shop more carefully, and then improved it with the iron smelting technology in the Taoist scriptures. Although the Taoist scriptures record how to use a furnace to make steel, some practical details, such as how to select ore, how to set up a furnace to melt iron, and even how to burn the charcoal required for iron smelting, he must explore it himself. After making a plan based on the furnace equipment in Donner's blacksmith shop, Leonor began to take action officially. He withdraws 5 golden dragon pocket money from the old scholar Kristen as experimental gold. The old bachelor has been busy with the post-war restoration work of Finksabeo, summoning people to cultivate, repair mills, etc., and has no time to pay attention to him, so he agreed to his application for funding casually. Leonor resigned to hand over the hardware dragon to Donner, and no one else was available to him at the moment. He asked Donald to remodel the blacksmith shop according to his requirements and buy charcoal and manpower. As for the most important iron ore raw materials, he doesn't need to spend money to buy it for the time being. There are still 500 or 600 kilograms in the blacksmith shop, which is enough. When Donner's blacksmith shop was renovated, the old molten pool was demolished and replaced by an open smelting platform. Compared with the original, only an expansion was made. At most, the bellows connected by mud paste were added to the bottom. Added trenches dug in advance. Donner couldn't figure out what Leonor was going to do, but as a retainer, he could only act according to the orders, and he demanded himself with the loyalty of the knight. According to Leonor's request, he gave up the previous use of carbonite, that is, coal smelting, and sent pine charcoal and iron ore to the smelting platform, and then started work with the help of 5 apprentices. As the bellows blow, the iron ore on the smelting platform quickly melted in the middle of the red charcoal. It was pounded by Donner with a wooden stick and led out of the smelting platform along the groove and flowed into the pre-prepared red mud mold. Leonor stood in front of the hot smelting platform, watching the red molten iron into the mold, looking forward to it. Donner stood beside him, looking at the red iron, and then at the anticipated Leonor, and finally flattered with a smile, "Sir, your new approach has really made us much more convenient." This is flattery and comes from the heart, because Donner found that the one-time smelting method of expanding the furnace in this way is really labor-saving. Is that, Leonor was naturally a little happy to have Donner's recognition. But he was still looking forward to the quality of molten iron. After the iron blocks and the red mud were poured into cold water to cool down, Donner picked up a piece. He was ready to flatter Mr. Leonor regardless of the quality, but when he carefully observed the iron blocks in his hand after that, "I couldn't help but feel a little surprised." Donner put down one piece, waited for the second piece to fill and cool down before looking, and waited for the third piece. After the iron on the stove was gone, only a pile of rotten slags were left. Donner carefully checked 6 pieces of smelted iron, each of which was of excellent quality black iron, and even just a little forging can be a good sword. Is it the blacksmith's blessing? Or did Master Leonor use some magic? Donner reported the situation to Leonor in awe, and did not dare to ask more questions, and Leonor naturally knew that he had succeeded. He didn't use any magic, but just asked to smelt charcoal to absorb iron ore impurities while ensuring the charcoal content in the iron. In addition, the unified smelting method neutralizes the charcoal content to make the iron block produced quality and key. This is just the lowest cast iron method in the Taoist scriptures. Can they cast weapons? Yes, and it's very convenient. Just leave it to me. Donner rushed to serve. No, leave it to them. Leonor refused Donner's role, but pointed at the 5 apprentices and said to them, "From the future, you will be Mr. Noy's apprentices. Learn well with him. In the future, I will make you rich, even become a knight." The 5 apprentices were all civilians recruited from Fengxi Castle. They could only make a living in the blacksmith shop. When they heard Leonor promise to make a fortune and become a knight, they immediately nodded like pounding garlic. "Donner, can you?" Leonor asked for Donner's advice. The blacksmith was stunned at first, then he didn't know what he thought of, and nodded repeatedly. "Don't worry, Lord Leonor, I will teach them as my son, then your son will be a little too much in the future." Leonor laughed, and Donner became happier when he heard this. Chapter 13 The Imperial Knight. In this way, Donner began to run a blacksmith shop for Leonor. The piles of iron ore were uniformly melted into pig iron blocks with charcoal, and then forged by an iron hammer and turned into sharp sword weapons. Then he went to a merchant to sell it, and finally transformed into shining gold and silver coins. Now that the war is not over, there are disputes everywhere in Westeros, and weapons are not worried about sales. The 5 golden dragons that Leonor first cast out increased by more than 10 times in just 1 month. Of course, this double the income is indispensable to the efforts of Donner and his apprentices. Leonor kept his promise and offered 5 apprentices a salary of food, accommodation and 1 golden dragon every year. At the same time, he asked Donald to expand the blacksmith shop, recruit more apprentices and workers, buy more iron ore, and earn money. More money. Donner naturally did it one by one, and quickly began to recruit people to expand the blacksmith workshop. According to Leonor's requirements, he separated iron smelting and forging, arranged apprenticeship and worker positions respectively to form assembly line operations. Swords produced were sold, and golden dragons and silver deer flowed into Leonor's pocket. In just 3 months, Leonor's capital invested was returned again, with more than 100 spare money from golden dragon on hand and his 17 apprentice workers, including Donner, able to produce 7 to 7 every day. A blacksmith's workshop with 8 swords. Instead of expanding the workshop again, he tried his best to maintain the weapon output, while secretly studying how to further smell stronger steel with Donner until the 284th year of the conquest. After the siege of Fengxi Fortress and the 283 years of conquest, the anti-Wang Wang army dominated by the Stormland had firmly taken the lead. Robert led his army into King's Landing and was successfully crowned as king. Jon Elan, the great lord of the Eagle Nest City in the east, became his king's hand, that is, the prime minister, as Stannis led his army to successfully capture Dragonstone Island, the territory where the Targaryen tribe made. The kingdom of Dorne in the south was appeased by Jon Elan and announced that he would give up the war, and the situation in the 7 kingdoms began to stabilize again. Totally stabilize. Robert's first thing he did was send a message to the Windsburg Castle, asking Leonor and Renly to go to the Red Ford in King's Landing to meet their king. Leonor had no objection, and Renly would not have it. He was currently learning to write. When he heard that his brother who had become king summoned him, he wanted to fly to the Red Fort immediately. In this way, Leonor and Renly each brought 2 followers, and set out from the Windsnatch Castle under the escort of the knights led by Sir Cottonay, and set out from King's Avenue to King's Landing. This is the first time Leonor has left Windsburg and sees the world far away from the city. He saw the beautiful wilderness along the way, with messy weeds growing freely, and a hare jumping out of the shade of the trees. When he arrived at the crowded farm, there were large areas of farmland, and the yellow-colored farmer stood in it. With his hands standing, he wore wooden farm tools and looked at the passers-by with a pair of slightly dim eyes. When his eyes looked over, he quickly lowered his head and dodged. Originally, Sir Cottonay had no intention of entering the farmhouse village. He bypassed a village along the way and planned to travel quickly to King's Landing for 2 days, but Leonor arrived at the first one out of the need to be familiar with the world. The larger Tongman City was so scammered that we couldn't leave, so we could only spend the night in Tongman City on the east bank of the Wenda River. The Copper Gate is an affiliated leader of the Stormland and belongs to the Buckles family. They are affiliated to the Baratheon family. The current Earl of the Copper Gate is Ralph, who is currently serving Robert in King's Landing. Sir Ercy, who is left behind, is to lie. Anno and his party gave a diligent reception the next morning. The team started again, crossed a bridge built by the Buckles family on the Wenda River, and entered the boundless woods. Leonor was still looking around the way, looking at the woods where birds were chirping, asking Sir Cottonay about the geography here, and only then did he know that this place had left the territories of the Stormland and began to enter Westeros. Royal Grove. The Royal Grove is a royal hunting territory in Westeros. There are also some villagers living in it. They plant in the clearings of the woods, take care of orchards, and pick mushrooms, but cutting and hunting are not allowed, because all trees and animals are his property belonging to the royal family. That night, he entered a farm next to the Imperial Road as he wished. The farm was composed of 20 or 30 farmers. The house was full of low mud houses. It belonged to a knight named Donalds. The knight ran to Junlin. The city serves the king, probably because he died outside, and now there is only one manager named Batchet. Although there is no backbone in the family, the manager of the Night Manor, Batchet, is very smart and arranged for them to enter the largest wooden house to live. However, Cottonay was a little worried and personally brought Renly by his side and asked Orit, "Protect Leano, then direct the accompanying soldiers to inspect and find a woman and a child from the house." Perhaps the soldiers were a little more rude, which made the woman scream Batchett's name and screamed constantly. The little boy kept crying, making Batchett, who was guarded by 2 armored warriors, look like paper. Sir Cottonay looked at the manager's face wrong and immediately asked him to tell who the screaming woman and the crying child were. The other party was shaking like a sieve and could only answer tremblingly, saying that the woman was called Nora, and she was the master of Dunnels. His wife, the child is the owner's posthumous son. Because he was afraid of Cottonay and others, he hid his mistress and the young master. "When did your master go out to fight? A year ago? No, 2 years ago? What's your master's full name? Call Duns. Say, who are you? Why dare you pretend to be a knight?" Sir Cottonay had already seen the clue. This territory did not belong to a knight at all. It was purely Batched acting impersonation. Every noble or knight has his own surname, and the civilians in Westeros call the knights not master, but prefix the name with jazz. When facing unknown superiors, they will also call adults masters. Answer. Seeing through Sir Cottonay, the man Bucket's expression suddenly changed. He waved his hand and broke free from the constraints. He wanted to escape. But a soldier was quick-eyed and quickly cut off his head with a sword. Living, blood-ridden head fell to the ground. The woman holding the child screamed and cried, while Cottonay was merciless, causing a soldier to take her child away, bring her before him to interrogate, threatening, "If you don't tell the truth, then kill her child." Leano looked at the head on the ground and the soft headless corpse, and was already so scared that his face was pale. When Cottonay looked at the way he threatened the woman with a child, he felt a sense of discomfort in his heart, but he didn't dare. He spoke, because a thought flashed through his mind. Cottonay and these soldiers are not the army that adheres to the strict creed in their impression. They can kill Beckett and threaten women with children. Can they kill him in Renly? The same thing is true. Can you not read it? Can you only see it? Chapter 14. Red Fort. Leonor dared not speak, and under Cottonay's interrogation, the crying woman told the whole story. This farm was indeed not the territory of the knight, but was cultivated by Batched in the name of a farmer. As for Beckett, he was a mercenary who fled from the opposite side of the narrow sea. He summoned farmers to reclaim this farm in the name of Knight Donalds, intending to rely on it to survive. He took the opportunity to become famous and upright in the future, but he did not want to encounter Coda. However, this group of evil stars was discovered on the spot and threw their heads away for this. After Cottonay asked about the whole story, he immediately announced that the territory would be returned to Wang Yu and asked the soldiers to inform the others in the village of the news. As for Beckett's women and children, they would be taken back to King's Landing together tomorrow and handed over to give the golden robe to the city and submit it to the king for judgment. All the territory of the king belongs to the king, and any dispute is only judged by the king or the former ministers appointed by the king according to the law. If it is local, this judgment power belongs to the great lord or the church, and no one else has the right to interfere. That night, Leonor slept in a strange room. The soldiers of Baratheon had just killed the owner of the house. He was a little unable to sleep, always afraid that something would jump out of the darkness. Fearing and torture, he could not fall asleep, so he could only get up and sit cross-legged and regulate his breathing, and silently circulate his ki and blood. Bang! A strange noise suddenly came from his ears. The voice of Cottonay outside made Leano, who was gradually extinguishing his thoughts, open his eyes and saw that Cottonay seemed to be scolding someone. He got up from the bed and wanted to sneak out to see it, but was blocked by the dark night of Westeros. There was no light in Westeros and he couldn't see his 5 fingers. He used to get 1 or 2 candles in the Windsnack Castle. There is nothing in this royal farm, but soon a huge black shadow came over, and it was Cottonay's figure. He found Leano, who had gotten out of bed. Mr. Leonor, what do you want to do? I heard the sound. Leano saw Cottonay at night and subconsciously took 2 steps back. That's right. I have 2 little boys who don't have eyes. I want to attack that woman, so I stopped them. Cottonay's explanation surprised Leano. Why do you do this? Leano remembers that during the day, Cottonay threatened the woman with a child, so why did he protect her now? Of course it's honor. Lord Leonor, a man should not attack an ignorant woman, even if she commits a crime. He should be tried by the king or by the law. Then today, is that an honor? Leano did not directly mention Cottonay's threatening women with children during the day, which was not an honor. If that woman doesn't explain, do you really want to do that? Courtenay could not have imagined that Leonor's order was so clear and understood the nature of his behavior today. He pondered for a while and replied, "I don't know. Leonor's fear of Courtenay was a little lacking, because he found that Sir Courtenay was not an unreasonable person. At least he did not speak out loud in double standards for his behavior. Yes, I don't know, that behavior is definitely not honorable, but I think I should understand the truth here more, so when necessary, I may take measures that are not honorable, but the behavior that is not honorable is not honor, so honor is because of its performance, not its person. That's right, maybe I should strengthen my literacy and writing skills when I look back." Courtenay's tone contained some gentle and affirmative smiles. "Thank you for your teachings, and I'm sorry, I've caused you trouble these 2 days, so I've gone to bed. Please rest with confidence. I will protect you and Lord Renly. Thank you again. I'm going to sleep." Leonor obediently returned to the bed, and Courtenay, who was outside the door, left that night. He thought of many things and clearly realized the essence of the knight. The knight is not only a military system, but also a moral value and an economic embodiment with the name of a virtual knight. Batchet was able to open a farm in the royal forest, and only by relying on the name of the knight and relying on their force, farmers could plant with peace of mind without the protection of the lord or knights. The passing robbers or bandits, and even neighboring farmers or other idle people, will plunder the farmers without hesitation and rob them all. It seems that if you want to hang out in Westeros in the future, you will not be able to avoid a knight's barrier. Leonor thought of falling asleep very late, and woke up the next day, feeling refreshed, and followed Courtenay to Junlin as he said. Courtenay brought back its wife and children with him, and left a soldier to guard the farm and take care of the farmers in the farm so that they could not be robbed. There was nothing to say all the way. In the morning, the team finally reached the north shore of the Blackwater estuary, which is the largest city in Westeros so far. It lives in a large population, and its lively level is far more lively than Finksy Castle. When Leonor followed the team and reached the height of the Imperial Forest, he looked from a distance and saw a high wall extending across the rushing Blackwater River. There were countless houses in the city, with 2 huge castles as the core. Scattered on all sides, people traveling endlessly. Courtenay and others rode downhill and came to the bank of the Blackwater River. They called a few boats from afar. After paying, they drove everyone across the river. Leonor sat on the deck of the wooden boat and looked at the bank. The women washing their bare arms in the water lamented that the social landscape was indeed completely different after crossing the river. Courtenay and others rowed again, and Leonor also rowed with Dorrit. A large group of people entered through a gate in King's Landing, bypassed under a prominent white marble castle, and passed through numerous crowds of people. The market is heading to a red fortress in the southeast corner of the city. Where's the red fort? Leonor and Dorrit shared a horse, holding the soldier's waist tightly, and could not see how the red fort was built nearby, because he did not see any gaps. The city, it seems that it is a pottery made from pinched clay. It is not difficult to make. It is always possible to urge manpower to make it. The key is how to burn it. This city was not burned by the Targaryens with dragon flames. A sudden idea popped up in Leonor's mind. He looked at the city of Red Fort, lamented his majesty and fortune, and speculated on the steps of the building, but he could not feel the thoughts like Wind Whisper Castle. And he didn't know whether the city could resist the storm like Wind Whisper Castle, or block the White Walkers like the Great Wall of Desperate. While Leonor was indulging in fantasy, he was brought into the Red Fortress by Dorrit. From the inside, he could once again see that the Red Fortress was like a small city in the city, with a square tower as the core and 6 spires towards the surrounding area is pulled, connected by the city wall, and is laid out into regular multi-stitched stars, like a castle on the earth, with a connected city walls covered with battlements, and occasionally you can see iron spears embedded on the wall. There are also low houses and courtyards of all sizes in the middle of the 7 city towers. They are not red, but built with bricks and stones. Among them are nobles with silk clothes and shiny jewelry, and they are also wearing lotus helmets and armor. Warrior in golden robe. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15: The Life of King's Land. Sir Courtenay took Leonor and Renly all the way to the Red Fort, crossing the street with a crowned stag flag, and heading towards the center of the square mega tower, which is named after the Targaryen dynasty. The third king, Meg Targaryen, was the builder of the Red Fort. He was called the Cruel Megari by people because he ordered the killing of all the craftsmen involved in the construction of the Red Fort and suppressing the Church of the Seven Gods. Thinking about the aristocratic history he had studied, Leonor followed Katane straight into the Mega Tower, got off his horse and walked up the steps to a vast and brilliant hall where he saw his brother Robert, who had been away for 2 years compared to last time. Robert now gains a lot of weight, with his cheeks protruding outward, which is obviously round, and shallow beards grow on his chin. But he barely remains handsome. He saw his 2 younger brothers who had been away for a long time and made a rare appearance. Laughing, and reaching out to pinch Leonor's cheeks, he leaned over and asked, "How about it?" "Leono, what about you, really? See if it's okay here." "Okay." Renly's reply made Robert laugh at it, let Leonor rub his face and scream in pain, and then he picked up his youngest brother and announced, "Then you can live here from today." Just as Robert's words fell, a thin old man standing beside him in green clothes shouted, "Rober." Only then did Leonor notice the others on the scene. In addition to this old man, there's an old man Long Zhang with an iron ring necklace, and 7 warriors with bright armor and white robe. "They are my younger brother and can live here." Robert was dissatisfied with the old man's shout, but the other party refuted without giving in. "Leonor doesn't matter, but according to our discussion, Renly doesn't work. He can't live here for a long time." The old man Shubba said something that made Leonor confused. Robert had no choice but to nod his head with his fate. Okay. I get it. Now, Leonor and Renly, listen to it. Leonor, I appoint you as the Prince of the Summer Hall, and the territory and taxes of the Summer Hall belong to you. Robert hugged Renly, first spoke to Leonor, and then said to Renly in his arms, "And Renly, you inherit the fancy castle of our family for generations, and let the storm guard. How about it? Are you happy?" Robert did not have any kingly manners and teased the most ignorant young brother, whereas Stannis, Leonor didn't expect that he could also be a prince. The Summer Hall, where Robert won 3 wins a day. It seemed that there was no fuel and no money. Shouldn't Stannis inherit the Storm Land? Could it be that he had gone to Longshea Island? I heard that he was so poor that he was so unlucky. Robert, who was originally happy, suddenly turned bad when he heard the third brother's words, and said in an impatient voice, "I have given a territory that matches his identity. This is not something you should worry about. Leonor, your next task is the heaviest." "My task is the heaviest." What does it mean? Before Leonor could change his mind, he heard Robert turning around in his arms. Pisser, and Balliston, a tall and strong man with white armor and an old man with a different colored iron ring on his chest, came out and bowed to Robert together. "His Majesty." "Leonor, from today on, you'll follow them both, and I'll stare at you." "What's the matter?" Leonor was puzzled and then made a prince. The name sounds nice, but what does the situation behind it mean? Just follow the arrangement. Under Robert's arrangement, Leonor and Renly were left in Red Fort. Renly was idle, but Leonor was arrested from bed by Balliston every day, asking him to learn to wield his sword and imagine to fight for the attack. In the afternoon, I followed the old man with Renly and had many iron rings hanging on my chest to learn poetry and music, and met aristocratic families. At the beginning, he was a little unaware of it, so he could only study if he was depressed, until one morning half a month later, he was praised by old Balliston. Mr. Leonor, you have a high talent in learning, and I believe you can fulfill your Majesty's expectations of you. Under Balliston's helmet was a rosy young face with white beard and hair. He came from the Stormy family in the Storm Harvest Hall. He was the other party's royal guard as early as the period of the Mad King Iris II. Anno also heard people mention him at the fancy castle celebration banquet, and they all said that he is the strongest knight in the world. Today Robert encountered the tenacious resistance of Balliston during the attack on King's Landing, and finally defeated the other party. However, for the need to conquer the people's hearts, he did not kill the other party, and even appointed the other party as his royal guard captain. Thus conquer the other party. Leonor also remembers that this old boss seems to be quite famous in the play. It caused a controversy when he defected to Long Mom, but in the end he died at the hands of an unknown young man, and his great reputation was wasted. During the past half-month of contact, he had not seen any strengths of the other party. He didn't talk much. Compared with the nagging Passel, he was very calm and restrained, but a bit ordinary. Now such an ordinary guy told him that he was given expectations. What does it mean? Leonor couldn't figure it out and asked directly, "What expectations?" "Sorry, I can't tell you." I hate Ritter man. Leonor cursed in his heart and could only continue to learn from Balliston. Balliston was responsible for teaching him martial arts and military strategies. His daily exercise was to wield a heavy wooden sword to exercise, and then use the world's unique Shiva's chest to train his intelligence. Pachel taught him the history of poetry, telling the story of the 7 kingdoms and various family forces on the eastern continent, their badges, their history, their specialties, etc. The learning process is boring, but fortunately, the freshness of the first arrival of Red Castle relieves Leonor's loneliness. In half a month, he traveled around every corner of the Red Fort and visited places including Mage Tower, Prime Minister's Tower, Virgin House, White Sword Tower, and King's Hall. He wanted to find the TV series too. Yo escaped from the tunnel of Red Fort, but failed, but he also gained other gains. He asked about the whereabouts of the basement from some Red Fort guards, and saw dragon skulls of all sizes inside, which are said to be giant dragon skulls controlled by the Targaryen family for generations. These giant dragon skulls were originally exhibits hanging in the King's Hall, but after entering the Red Fort, Robert ordered Mill's tapestry to replace the keel, and the dragon's head was put into the basement to eat dust water waste. Leonor complained about his brother's new dynasty as hen. When he was discussing with Donner how to forge stronger steel, he heard the other party mention more than once that keels can be used to build weapons, and some suitable keels can. It is made directly into a longbow, as strong as steel and lighter. The keel bow and the Valyrian steel sword are hard to find, and they are regarded as treasures that are enough to heirloom by the nobles. But when they come to Robert, they throw them directly into the basement to eat ashes. No, I can't watch the pearls covered with dust. Since Robert doesn't like these dragon bones, I might as well find a way to solve it for him. Chapter 16 Spiritual Practice. The straight arrows were nailed straight into the bullseye, and the powerful force penetrated a wooden target, and the feathers were trembling continuously. This scene made a black-haired and blue-eyed person in the distance, about 16 years old, holding one in his hand. The handsome young man with short bow nodded, and his face was very satisfied. No, Leonor put down the short bow thorn in his arms, which was pale and bone-colored in his hands, and commented with satisfaction, the Dorn short bow made of this keel and quartz wood is very strong, and its performance is no less than that of the golden heartwood longbow. It is smaller and lighter. It can allow an adult to sit on the horse and keep it open. It is very excellent and can be used as a large number of people. The cavalry bow made is not required to have a whole branch like a longbow, nor does it require a specific and large enough keel like a keel bow. It can be created as long as the keel scraps and a small branch of beamwood or yew in a blink of an eye. It is now 293 years of conquest. In the past 9 years, Leonor has been able to fully study in the Red Fort and King's Landing. When he is bored, he has explored the art of craftsmanship, bringing the pottery and forging skills in the ancient world to this world, and it was transformed into a continuous stream of wealth through Donner. He also reserved a large number of swords, spears, bows and armor, and explored better weapons manufacturing techniques, among which the short bow of the keel complex beam wood is one, and the other is the protective armor. Leonor casually played with a short bow in his hand. In the battle formation, the two most favorable equipment were bows and arrows, and the other was armor. According to his investigation, Westeros' highest skill at present is plate armor manufacturing. This process requires a large amount of steel and the best craftsmen. The labor hours consumed need to be calculated in months, which is the highest luxury. It is an existence that can be regarded as an heirloom by the nobles. In addition to plate armor, Westeros knights wear the most leather armor, zippers, scale armor and chain mail. Among them, chain mail and scale armor are more precious, and the complete chain mail and scale armor are also the same. Little knights can be passed down from family existence, while armor and leather armor are the most common, and their qualities are also different. Leonor now stores a lot of scale armor and zithers, but there is no high-quality chain mail and plate armor. Now he wants to make an armor code himself, preferably one from the Yangshan world. Immortal armor. The practice of the Yangshan world is divided into two paths, martial arts and souls. Taoist masters who practice souls can activate their souls to fly to the sky and escape from the earth as long as they are in the realm of appearance and possession. Martial masters can only snatch up to 50 within the same realm. The reason why they can compete with Taoist masters is that they have fairy clothes and armor. The legendary fairy armor in the ancient world can fly quickly as soon as it is worn. It cannot burn when it enters fire, and cannot flood when it enters water. It will add infinite power and even integrate with a body. If a master of Taoism wears this kind of Taoist skills, Armor can also immediately compete with martial arts masters, or even compete with a thunder disaster. What a pity. Leonor shook his head. Not to mention the fairy armor, he couldn't even get the black gold silk from the Dazan Temple. Now the Dachan Temple, a martial arts holy land in Yangshan world, is good at using hardware and medicine to temper silk, then weave it into black gold cloth, and make it into black gold robes. It is not afraid of fire and can control swords and swords. It is very powerful. This is a relatively low-level armor, but he can't do it either, because weaving black gold silk requires the assistance of soul and magic. Although he is also practicing Taoism, he has never formally practiced out of the body and is in a kind of accumulation state. The cultivation of the soul is different from martial arts. It focuses on nourishing the soul with qi and blood, and is extremely talented. Martial arts practice requires gradual progress, but the soul can be broken through at one time through long-term warming. There are countless Taoist geniuses in the Yangshan world who cultivated into ghost immortal at the age of 8. However, because the soul was too strong, the body was defeated and there was no spiritual medicine to replenish it, so they had to go into the mountain to relieve it. Leonor calculated that he had lived in this world for 16 years. His talent was not high, but by diligent practice, he should try to leave his body now. If he continues to practice hard, once after the soul turned around, he became a ghost immortal when he left his body. It would be impossible to cause the decline of qi and blood in the body. He was well behaved, and he had no plans to dissolve the corpse. Just as Leonor was planning to leave his body and practice, he suddenly walked. He turned his head and saw Dorat, wearing leather armor, walking tightly, and he followed him in a long robe and holding a donanoi in a box. Lord Leonor, Dorat bowed in honor. What is on your hand? Leonor raised his hand to stop the etiquette of the two, pointed directly at the box in Donor's hand and asked, Sir, this is the heart tree you need. Donor opened the box in his hand with a flattering smile, revealing a piece of trunk with a gray bark as white as bones. There was a human face on the trunk. There is a red dirt-like blood stasis in the eyes, ears, mouth and nose. Zin tree, where did you get it? Leonor was startled first, then looked at the strange trunk and was ecstatic. This was indeed the main trunk of a heart tree, and it was the most essence of the heart. The so-called heart tree is an ancient fish-beam tree, which originated from the old god beliefs of our ancestors before the Andals who believed in the 7 gods came to Westeros. The ancestors on this continent believed in the old gods. They regarded the oldest beamwood as the incarnation of the old gods and carved a human face on it, and then pray, swear and enter into a marriage contract to the heart tree. After the Andals arrived in Westeros, they cut down large quantities of quashes for the needs of military preparation and forced their ancestors to make good use of the need of military preparation, which led to almost extinction of Aquasheshes in the area south of King's Landing. Only some nobles were war-red and for the ancestors' belief compromises, and some divine wood forests were preserved for people to admire, but there was no longer the existence of fish-beam wood heart trees, all of which were oak, birch or yew. I bought it from a Hegian nobleman who once owned a castle near Chenian Lake. There is a rare area near Chenian Lake where beam trees are still growing. I know you really want it. With a pleasing smile, he glanced at the short bow in Leonor's hand. The burr of the short bow was made of a quartz, but not a heart tree. Thank you, Donner. How much did it cost? Leonor nodded. It didn't cost much. It was probably only 300 golden dragons. Let's go back and get 300 golden dragons from Vincent. Leonor waved directly to reimburse Donner for the expenses, paused slightly and said, when I arrive at the summer hall, you can own a piece of land there for taxes. Leonor carefully chose to use words, and when Donner heard this, he was not suspected of him, and his face showed ecstasy. Sir, Donner's eyes were filled with ecstasy. But he still wanted to speak but stopped. What else is there? Leonor heard that there were other meanings in Donner's words. I've been in love with a woman recently. Donner was a little embarrassed. Which family is from? Leonor understood Lao Tang's nature very well. This guy has never been married before. It's not that he doesn't want to get married, but that he looks down on ordinary women and has a preference for superior women. Doran Baratheon, she is, if I remember well, she should be the maid of Dillana Florent. You'd better not think about this woman for the time being. Leonor directly used a basin of cold water to extinguish her. Lao Tang's fantasy. Donner's expression froze. He instinctively wanted to ask why, but he couldn't ask. Dillana is very popular with my brother. You can't catch up with her now. If she is willing to wait for you, I will help you in the future. While Leonor told the truth, he did not forget to draw for Donner cake. Really? Donner reborn with hope? Of course, as long as she wants. Do you think she will do it? Leonor didn't say anything, but he found that the blacksmith on the opposite side gave a wretched smile. This guy hasn't already put people asleep. Leonor was a little surprised and started quickly, but it was hard to say who would sleep with the surname Barish. Chapter 17 Robert and Chapter X27, S-Plan. Leonor put down her stamp aside in advance, turned around and found tools to start processing the trunk of the heart tree, peeled off the gray-white bark, exposed the blood-seeking bright red tree trunks, and carefully collected the solidified blood. The juice is then processed by boiling the tree trunk. Finally, the trunk of the entire heart tree was sawed open, and only the center part was taken. After polishing and polishing, it turned into a stick about 1.34 meters long, and put a 6-page sized fist on the top of the head. The hammerhead is a bright red mace. Leonor originally planned to cultivate into a wooden sword to drive things. If the soul spells in the Yangshan world want to control objects, the wood that can accommodate the soul is the best, jade is second, and steel is the second. The strength of the heart tree is not bad, but the attack after making a sword blade is not satisfactory. His martial arts cannot achieve the realm of wood and stone as a sword, so he simply settles down and takes the magic route directly. Make a nail hammer, turn around and find the right jade crystal and change it to a staff. Then get a Valyria sword, which is considered a double cultivation of the sword staff. Perfect. Leonor held the newly made mace, and was satisfied, and made up his mind. At night, he found an uninhabited dark room, and took out a piece of fragrance made of tree sap, ambergris and lilac. Put it in the tray, then throw the nail hammer aside, make seals with both hands, and start to use the pagoda to visualize it. Fantasize the body into a pagoda, and the consciousness settles into the lower dimension. Unexpectedly, Leonor consciousness found a staircase inside the pagoda, walked up one after another, and finally arrived at the top of the pagoda, looking up at the surroundings of the void, as if he had arrived at the top of the city wall of Fengxi Castle, and looked up. You can see the clear sky and the strong winds are shaking. You can look down at the waves here. Leonor jumped down from the tower without any sorrow and joy. He felt a strong sense of weightlessness. The moment his flesh and blood fell into mud, his soul soared upwards floating. Suddenly the sky was bright, and Leonor opened his eyes. It was already bright, and a cloud of smoke was shrouded in his body. Success! Leonor lowered his head, and could see the incense burning in the tray beneath him, and the darkness in front of him was clear. In the corner, the boy with his hands sealed was about 16 years old, closed. His eyes were very handsome, and he looked like he usually looked in the mirror. It's so weird. Leonor looked at his body and couldn't help but shake his head, turned around, and walked directly through the walls of the dark room with a protective incense smoke. The substance that can block the body is like a false view to the soul. Leonor easily walked through the wall and came outside the house. He felt a cold covering his body. Looking up, he saw a bright moon in the sky, and the cold moonlight covered his body. It made him feel cold in consciousness, but fortunately the incense on his body still exists, and his soul is still strong, reflecting a shadow under the moonlight, which can withstand the moonlight. Fortunately, this is a state of night travel. My talent doesn't seem to be very high. He is an 8-year-old ghost immortal. I guessed that I was 16 years old, and I had to drive away my things or show my appearance no matter how I went. As a result, I traveled for a long time. Not even there, Leonor quietly placed in the moonlight and complained a few words, and began to silently look at the bright moon in the sky. The moon view and the star gods of the heavens recorded in the Taoist scriptures. The moon is full of phases. Every night, Leonor escapes his soul. At first, he uses incense, but later, he does not use incense, so he can naturally fly into the air, watch the moon in the courtyard and meditate, and turn the bright moon from ignition to fullness. After recording the process, the soul naturally gave birth to a cold and noble atmosphere, making him more outstanding on this day. Red Castle was a rare gloomy weather, and there was no sign of thunder and heavy rain in the sky. Leonor tried to ignite an incense and then flew out his soul. Even with clouds covering the sky and incense protecting him, he could not help but feel the whole body burning. Fortunately, he gritted his teeth and persevered. First, he left his body on a cloudy day, and then he appeared under the sun sooner or later. Soon, Leonor successfully broke through to the realm of a day trip, and he could appear in Red Fort even under the scorching sun. On this day, Leonor walked through the room of Red Fort, looking for something interesting to pass the time, suddenly broke into a room with milk carpets, tapestries and round windows of gold frames, but broke into the Prime Minister's tower inside. "Why are you here?" Leonor was about to leave when he suddenly heard a burst of words. "Rob, It's time now." A husky and low voice came from the window, causing Leonor to stop. He seemed to have heard the brother's name. "Leano, is he really okay?" Robert's signature thick voice came. "Oh, it's really my brother, and I'm still talking about my topic." Leonor stopped leaving the power and pressed his soul down. He saw Robert, whose belly was as big as a barrel, standing under the window with an emerald crown and talking to John Elan, the king's hand. John Elan is a thin gray-haired old man wearing a green robe with 2 badges on his chest, one of which is a palm-shaped king's hand badge, and the other is a blue-bottomed fly from the Elan family. Eagle emblem. "You proposed this yourself, and we all agree." John was displeased with Robert's hesitation. "He is my younger brother, and I just wanted to do it for a while." Robert put his hands behind his back, expressing his dissatisfaction with his belly. "What did I do?" Leonor became interested, and he curled up and sat on the curtains, listening to Robert continue to speak to John. "That kid is just a guy who likes to have fun. He asked him to go with Tyrael in the Dorne. I think he would still let him play with mud and make some money by doing business casually. He cares about the bad things in the border areas. But here, Tyrael family and the Dornese, let me go and let them go?" Leonor's eyes widened. "He is not alone, he has us." John rejected Robert's words. "Let Leonor go to the frontier. This is what you proposed by yourself, and it is also our preset plan. Once he succeeds, and let's settle on the frontier, so that your Iron Throne has me in the east, and Stannis on the sea. Use the storm and frontier to block the river and Dorne, so that we can take the time to clean up Lannister." "Good guy." Leano opened his mouth wide. And it turned out that the old man wanted to touch Lannister. "Cersei is my wife." Robert was a little embarrassed. This was just his strategy at that time. Now he and Cersei have even Joffrey, so what else should he do? "Don't be stupid, Robert. Among the 7 kingdoms, the Tully family cannot command the entire Aegean land. Ed in the north is your brother, and the Hedel family and the Florent family are in the riverside. The distance is too far, and now only Lannister can threaten the Iron Throne. How many people do you think Joffrey can use her hands after becoming the king? You must suppress Lannister before Joffrey becomes an adult." John was a little embarrassed, but Robert was a little undecided, and finally gave up. "Forget it, let Leano go to the summer hall. Anyway, as you said, there is the Hedel family in the riverside. Dorne's the distance is very long, and we are behind him, so we may not be able to fight." Leonor sat by the window, listening to Robert's words of family affection, but not much. His eyes rolled up slightly. "And this good day is over. The good days of making money in Genlin City are over." But Leano is not disappointed, but is excited. He has been waiting for this moment. He has reserved a large amount of weapons and equipment, and it is this moment. It is the dream of every man to have his own territory, plant a large area of fields, build an army that is prohibited, and participate in the competition in the world, and this dream is about to begin. Chapter 18: Recruiting. The next day, Leonor was summoned to the Megid house where the king was sleeping in anticipation, and accepted Robert's latest enthronement. "Leonor Baratheon, from today on, you will be the prince of the Midsummer Hall and the governor of the frontier. All the territories and taxes in the frontier belong to you." Robert was wearing a golden and green robe. Her beards and hair were combed neatly, and she was extremely serious about the young man in front of her. "Okay, I'm going," Leano naturally responded in his heart, but his face was silent, not even kneeling on his face. He even blinked his eyes and made an expression that was shocked and speechless. "You should thank your king." "Okay. It's okay." Robert was very unhappy about Leonor's failure to exercise manners, but he still felt a little guilty when he thought about sending him to the frontier. Relieve his corresponding etiquette. "Why did you suddenly let me go to the border?" Seeing Robert's attitude, Leonor immediately began to ask. "He has family affection, but not much, and he must take advantage of the fact that he still has family affection and needs to provide more support. What does it mean to suddenly ask you to go to the border? You are the prince of the Summer Hall. It should have been your territory. You are going to return to your territory now." Robert felt a little guilty in private, but it doesn't mean he is really stupid. "But am I always on the King's Landing?" Leonor tried to cheat, and was about to ask for something, but was interrupted by Robert. "That's just because you are still young, and I can't let you go to the border. Now that you have grown up, it's time to go back to your own territory. By the way, don't forget to recruit some people from King's Landing City. Stan, I will send you there, and bring some golden dragons with you. You can do the rest yourself." After finishing his speech, Robert, who was wearing a beer belly like a pregnant woman, turned his hands directly and left without looking back. asking Leonor to hold back his prepared words. This guy, Leonor watched Robert's chubby figure disappear, and he felt that the chubby figure was quite majestic. Should he help him change his destiny? Let's talk about it later. Leonor breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. How did this brother die? It seemed that he was killed by his wife, Lannister's shrew. Now that I can't hurry, I'd better get the border first and prepare a base. As its name suggests, the frontier is a buffer zone between the Stormland, Dorne and the River Bay. Even now, it is still ruled by many nobles in 3 areas. It has been through war and has a strong folk custom. If you want to rule there, it is not possible without force. As Robert said, Leonor's first thing was to recruit soldiers from King's Landing. He had Vincent, Dorrit, Donner and many workers. Robert also promised to let Balliston help him, but he still lacks soldiers, the most basic soldiers. Leonor asked Dorrit to help him draft a recruitment announcement, printed Baratheon's deer badge on it, and then asked Donner to find someone to post it to the major taverns in King's Landing, and set up recruitment at the announcement location. The personnel began to recruit soldiers on a large scale, and the requirements were that they were of the right age, outstanding physical fitness, and able to obey orders. The most important thing was to obey orders. As for the rewards, 2 golden dragons will be distributed as settlement fees if they are successfully recruited. If they perform well, they can be enthroned by the night. As soon as Leonor's recruitment announcement was released, it immediately caused a sensation in King's Landing City. Whether it is the settlement fee of the 2 golden dragons or the opportunity to become a knight, it is something that many people can encounter in their lifetime, especially the opportunity to become a knight. Even knights who have no fiefdom and cannot be passed on to family members are precious identities for ordinary people. On the day the recruitment announcement was posted, the number of people in each tavern was overflowing, and countless civilians ran around to tell each other. No one doubted the authenticity of the announcement, because it was attached with a deer emblem of the Baratheon family and the royal family emblem, which was used in an overwhelming manner. You will be beheaded. Although there are many people who signed up, they still encountered problems when they officially delivered the information. What? I want to prove that I am 16 years old and no more than 35 years old. How do I prove this? Have I found my mother? After a signing person submitted the information, he faced a feedback from the recruiting staff and directly responded to the recruiting staff. It's none. You can go to your guild or find a merchant, priest, nun or even knight from King's Landing to issue a guarantee letter for you. This is a guarantee letter. As long as they sign it here, the recruiter handed over it. A piece of white paper and pointed to a blank space in the lower right corner to indicate, what is this? The applicant took the yellowed paper in white and looked at the font written in ink. He was illiterate and didn't care, but he felt that the paper was very novel and not a common parchment. This is paper, it's very fragile. You can fold it, but be careful when spreading it, not to break it, especially the signature. Remember, this can only be written by the guarantor, not by yourself. Once it is done by it was found that the qualification to participate in the re-examination was abolished. The recruited personnel tried their best to explain the situation clearly. Re-examination, the enrollee heard another new term. Yes, after the registration is successful, you still have a concentrated physical fitness exam. The assessment project is 2 digits. Only by completing the test can you pass. You can receive training, complete the first training, and perform well, and you will be officially admitted. Why are there so many restrictions? The applicants were dissatisfied. As long as you officially join the company, you will pay the settlement fee for the 2 golden dragons. Those who perform well can even be named knights. The recruiter's response made the applicants silent in an instant. Even with many restrictions and problems, there were still a steady stream of people receiving guarantee letters. After the news spread, it even caused an uproar in the circle of nobles. In the eyes of nobles who naturally have a bloodline circle, Leonor's promise of money and knighthood is worthless, and it is impossible to recruit real knights. Those real knights received training from childhood, starting from the lowest level of attendance, and through learning talents, they only attracted a group of barbarians with money and status. Some nobles disagree, but most nobles are ready to move. Not all nobles have great family and great business. Many nobles are just well off. Their property is only enough to pass on to their eldest son, while the second son and other children can only seek other careers. Devoting to the Prince of the Midsummer Hall to gain wealth is a very good way out. For a moment, the entire King's Landing city was stirred up, and the major guilds, merchants and churches located everywhere in the city were stirred up through the guarantee letter. We can ensure the innocence of the enlisted soldiers and ensure the physical fitness of the enlisted soldiers through physical fitness assessment. After many screenings, Leonor quickly recruited batches of outstanding soldiers. He went to the stage to train himself. The scramble of soldiers was asked to train Ballistan, and then, through 1 passing through 10 or 10 passing through hundreds, he brought out 800 soldiers with weapons in just 1 month. Chapter 19 Midsummer Hall. After 3 months of preparation, Leonor organized an army of 2,000 people in King's Landing, and stored a large amount of food, and began to officially head towards the Midsummer Hall in the border area. The Midsummer Hall is located at the end of the Bone Road in the Red Mountains, at the junction of the Stormland, the King's territory and the frontier. This was once the summer palace of Targaryen. The Targaryen royal family came here for vacation every summer. An alternative summer resort, but when Leonor led his team here, there were only a pile of ruins and rocks left here. The former Midsummer Hall was a palace where Aegon V, the 15th king of Targaryen, held a ceremony here, trying to hatch the dragon eggs of the Targaryen family with wildfires, but the ceremony failed and the flames caused by the wildfire swept across the entire world. The palace was abandoned, and the Targaryen royal family did not rebuild it later. Leonor stood on a hill on a black horse, looking at the ruins that once was a palace but now uninhabited, and couldn't help but sigh. This is a bit difficult to start with. Everything needs to be rebuilt. I really want to go back and inherit Fanxi Castle. Even Longshi Island should be stronger than this, sir. Lord Bar, grandson of Quan Chi City, Lord Gringer Cavrin of Yalutin, Lord Carlfair of Silver Axe of Luomu City are here. Ballistan came over on a white horse. They're all my old acquaintances. Leonor turned his head slightly and smiled. These 3 were nobles who belonged to the Baratheon family in the border areas. Well, Brother Robert raised an army back then. At that time, they also tried to stand on the side of the royal party until Old Fair was blown by Robert with a hammer, and his son Silver Axe and 2 other Jazz were thrown into Robert's command. Although the actions of the 3 nobles are shameless, one thing is to say, after they surrendered to Robert, they did make a lot of efforts in the war of seizing the throne. Old grandson of Quan Chi City died of excessive injury in the Battle of Trident River, while Cavlin of Yalutin died in the Battle of Bayington to cover Robert. Now these 2 families are here. They were all new successor heads. Leonor did not treat them slowly, and asked someone to set up a banquet to entertain them, and praised the bravery of their ancestors to show kindness to the 3 nobles. Now the 3 nobles have been loyal to Baratheon, have learned about the enthronement order issued by Robert, and know what the big and small kings are. In the face of Leonor's show of kindness, they are naturally humble and expressed their willingness to rebuild Leonor. For Leonor, the Semir Hall has worked hard to help. Leonor naturally directly refused the idea expressed by the 3 nobles. These 3 nobles said it nicely, but in fact, they just drove the people to help, and stood aside and flattered. Westeros forbids slavery, but the foster people who had cultivated the aristocratic land had to provide labor for the aristocrats free of charge, which was equivalent to an alternative serf. Leonor did not want his base to be built in the tears of the people, nor did he need it. I don't need the staff anymore. I have made the future plan for the Midsummer Hall and arranged for the follow-up staff to come. However, I hope everyone can help me in other aspects, such as selling some food to me. Please do not restrict some intentional free people from coming to me. Leonor smiled at the 3 nobles with a smile. Leonor had no other men, there were enough craftsmen, and the newly recruited army could also serve as laborers. He did not lack the staff to rebuild the Midsummer Hall, but the food and the population of the future territory. The 3 nobles hesitated about Leonor's requirement to buy food and not restrict population migration, but finally agreed. Okay, since you don't object, I will issue my first decree now. Seeing that the 3 nobles agreed, Leonor's smile stopped in an instant, and began to read the decree in a deep voice. From today, all free people who come to our territory can freely reclaim the land after making a declaration and exempt personal taxation. After 3 years of successful reclaim, the land can be owned by the people, as long as the land is paid on time. Taxation is protected by my laws. In the name of Baratheon, Westeros is a feudal system. Except for the common laws of the King's Peace, the 6 principles, the widow's law, the law of succession, etc., each lord is free to make rules. It is only a trivial matter to levy labor and increase taxes. There is even a place where the first night right exists. 3 sirs, this is my first decree. I will have someone post these decrees to your castle. Please keep your promises and do not stop the free people from coming to my territory. Leonor announced the decree. As he waved his hand, a soldier immediately took out the announcement paper with a deer badge. The 3 nobles could not come back to their senses at all, because this was the first time they had heard the promise of private ownership of the land. To be honest, in Westeros, the feudal system, people simply cannot understand the concept of private land. All the land belongs to lords and nobles. Anyone who hears this is confused if he agrees to share the land with the people. In their opinion, Leonor is like a big fool, a fool who distributes his own property to others because of the shock. Even if the three nobles came to their senses, they couldn't find anything to say. Even after the banquet was over, they were still shocked. Leonor ignored the reactions of the nobles, and asked someone to post the announcement to the frontier, the Stormland, and the various noble territories in the king's territory, and then began to prepare for the reconstruction of the Midsummer Hall. The Midsummer Hall was originally a palace, not a castle, and there were not many fortifications, which was inconsistent with Leonor's idea. He replanned the castle, and then mobilized his soldiers to clean up the original ruins and sorted the stone. Then the craftsmen began to work. The craftsmen who were summoned, according to the plan provided by Leonor, dug out caves in the Red Mountains, and then burned bricks with the excavated terracotta soil to capture the cave lions and black bears. The Taoist scriptures record the method of burning out red flame bricks and then building the city wall with cement bonding. Soon, a red city wall rose from the end of the bone road of the Red Mountains, connecting the mountains on both sides, with women's walls for archery and beacons. The city wall was built at the beginning, followed by flat-top houses. Leonor did not plan his own palace or castle within the construction plan, and he only lived in temporary residential buildings on weekdays, which made him effective. It avoided being assassinated and gained a huge reputation between civilians and soldiers while building the city without stopping. A considerable number of civilians rushed from the King's Landing city and the Stormland to the newly built Midsummer Hall. Leonor complied with his promise, provided tents and farm tools for these free people, and measured the land on the plain, exempting the personal taxes and short-term land taxes, and obtaining the land after 3 years of cultivation. This series of practices made more and more civilians happy. Under the temptation of the land, they brought their families to the south and cultivated hope on this land. In the first year when Leonor arrived at the Midsummer Hall, there was a lot of people on the ruins here, and countless food and materials were transported here from King's Landing and Stormland. The following year, the teams transporting food began to shrink, tall city walls and houses rose from the ground, and Leonor named this new city the New Summer Hall. In the third year, the Midsummer Hall no longer needed foreign food. On the contrary, countless pits were opened in the Red Mountains, covering layers of high temperatures. The pottery produced by the craftsmen under Leonor began to come out of here and transport it to the north and south. Chapter 20. Here comes. It's great to have a big tree back under the banner of Baratheon's royal power. Leonor's policy of promoting agricultural emphasis in the Midsummer Hall was very smooth. Not only did he solve the problem of eating within 3 years, but he also established a city with a population of 40,000 to 50,000, and even began to use the Red Mountains. The red clay firing pottery developed handicrafts. There is no local process for firing pottery in Westeros, and pottery and glass products can only be imported from free trade city-states such as Mill and Valentis. The prices of those pottery shipped across the sea are generally pushed above a silver deer, which is an absolute luxury in ordinary families. In the caves of the Midsummer Hall, these things are burned out hundreds or thousands, and then used wheatgrass was packed and sold to merchants from Dorne, Huon and the north. A pottery bottle can be bought with 10 brown stars, and a pottery bowl can be bought with 1 brown star. The pottery in the Midsummer Hall can be used to drive the merchants of Mill and Valentis directly. Leonor used the pottery burning process in Taoist to cut off the price of Westeros pottery much, but also expanded the use market, allowing pottery bowls, pottery bottles, clay jars, etc. to burn in the cave in the Summer Hall. The pottery utensils began to walk into the homes of ordinary residents, and at the same time, his already shriveled waste bag began to bulge again. In addition to pottery, Leonor also asked the blacksmith to build a large number of plows, hoes, sickles and other agricultural tools while ensuring armor and equipment. However, since there is no iron ore in the territory of the Midsummer Hall, these iron agricultural tools are now in the form of loans provided to farmers in the territory in exchange for the food they grow. Earn small money through pottery, link grain with iron, implement a policy of valuing agriculture, and at the same time, use the recognition of private ownership of land to stimulate the people's enthusiasm for production. Finally, with the blessing of King Baratheon, Leonor's farming work is orderly. After the pottery burning, it further remediates agriculture, develops water conservancy, and promotes crop rotation and planting of high-yield crops such as corn and pumpkin. Another year of unremitting efforts, the overall scale of the Midsummer Hall has emerged. a city built at the end of the Red Mountain Bone Road, a vast city surrounded by mountains and city walls. The mountains south of the city are full of earth and fire kills, and dust ash are emitted all day long. On the vast plains north of the city are fields after fields, planted with high-yield crops such as wheat, corn, pumpkin, etc. Today, the Midsummer Hall has completely gotten rid of foreign grain reliance, and even saved up grain for a whole year in the urban ground kills. The general population of the Midsummer Hall has exceeded 70,000, which has doubled directly. Other people came from the King's Land, the Riverland, and even the Riverland. Leonor was very happy that the population had been rising. Nothing could make him more happy than watching the city that he built was prosperous, but more and more people also made him feel pressure. There is nothing else, there is not enough land that can be cultivated. The Midsummer Hall is close to the Red Mountains, and the existing land here is not rich. Leonor promises that the people who come here have private ownership of the land. The 3-year period has passed long ago, and there is not much land left to cultivate near the city. Now Leonor was not worried about financial difficulties by credit to farmers and controlling the price of grain. Although he allowed private ownership of land, he still retained the collection of land taxes. But the key is that there is no land. How should he attract the next population? This is a development issue. If the original policy of valuing agriculture is still in line with the original policy of emphasis on agriculture, then outward expansion is essential. Leonor now finally knows why the ancient Chinese dynasty map has been expanding, and modern European powers have been pursuing colonies in a crazy way. This is essentially seeking the direction of development. The development of all countries has bottleneck periods. Once they fall into a bottleneck period for a long time, then it will enter a recession, which is also the reason why the ancient Chinese dynasties are constantly changing. The development of the Midsummer Hall is now a bottleneck period. The east and west sides of the Midsummer Hall are mountains, and have been developed as brick hill pottery factories. To the south is the territory of the Storm nobles, and to the north is the Black Harbor of the Dundelian family, which is the frontier nobility loyal to the Iron Throne. Not to mention the Storm, they are all untouchable existences. Really, why didn't anyone come to hit me? Leonor sighed a little. Baratheon's royal flag was too dense, which made Dorne and the nobles in the riverside land dare not provoke him. He is here farming alone, has no chance to expand. Nothing interesting. Leonor was a little bored. Just as he was thinking about whether he could find fault with others, a raven from the north brought news that the old Duke of Prime Minister John Ellen died of illness and brother Robert wanted to. He was summoned back to Genlin City and entered the imperial meeting to serve as the Minister of Justice to consolidate the government. Is this coming? Leonor stood on a mountain peak in the Red Mountains holding parchment, looking down at the thriving city at the foot of the mountain, and breathed a sigh of relief. According to the plot development, Robert should have wanted to go to the north and take his brother Ed Stark as the new prime minister. Then Ed found out that the Lannister brother and sister committed adultery, which led to Cersei Lan. Nice sent people to assassinate Robert, and the Iron Throne was hanging in the air. Joffrey, Stannis, Renly, Baron Greyjoy and Robb Stark each claimed to have the throne, thus forming the Five Kings. The pattern of the battle: Stannis, Renly, Robert. Leonor held the parchment in his hand and read out the names of his 3 brothers respectively. He was a little hesitant. Should he go back to King's Landing to save Robert? If Robert is saved, will the battle between the 5 kings still happen? If there was no battle of the 5 kings, would there be other wars? There is no doubt that without the battle of the 5 kings, there will be other wars in the Westeros continent. The Baratheon family has 3 territories: King's Territory, Stormland and Frontier. It seems that its strength has jumped above the 7 kingdoms, but in fact, cracks have appeared, and the 3 territories have been separated. It is not different from each other. It depends entirely on Robert's personal contact. Robert's throne is not stable. He did not ascend to the throne with absolute strength, but with Baratheon's roots in dragon blood, he ascends to the throne with the strong support of the Ellen family and the Stark family, and then welcoming Cersei Lannister to stabilize the situation is just a compromise, and there will always be times when the compromise situation collapses. Cersei Lannister, whom Robert married, was not a good person. She committed adultery with her younger brother and gave birth to the current Crown Prince Joffrey. Leonor could not accept the incest blonde from the bottom of his heart. The child became king of the Baratheon dynasty, not to mention the nearest thing, but the farthest thing. The Targaryen family was not completely destroyed back then. The crazy King heiress II still had a pair of children in the continent of Essos, and the beggar King Viserys was dubbed by netizens Deaneries of Dragon Mom. These 2 people are now alone, But among the 7 countries in Westeros, there is absolutely no shortage of guys who want to borrow them to make trouble, such as done. The war will definitely begin, the difference is just how it will begin. Then come on. Robert, don't say that brothers don't help you. Leonor looked at the city of Midsummer Hall in the distance and made a decision in his heart. He planned to help Robert. He was a brother, and Robert was the construction of the Midsummer Hall has given me great help. Chapter 21 Plans cannot keep up with changes. In preventing Robert's tragic fate, Leonor made a rough plan, a Game of Thrones strategy. His first step was to stop Robert from going to the north. Judging from the situation he knew, the brother Ed Stark was not a person suitable for Game of Thrones. This upright guy was originally the second son, but by chance he became the head of the Stark family. Instead of letting Robert pull him to King Lynn as a ruthless devil, it would be better to let him stay in the north and guard him with his upright character. As long as he lives for one day, the Starks will always be an ally of the Baratheon family. With the Stark family as an ally, in the future, the Baratheon family can at least ensure the neutrality of the princes in the northern border, monitor the White Walkers outside the Great Wall for the Iron Throne, and even if handled properly, they can pass through them. Go to threaten Lannister's flank. As long as Ed Stark is successfully prevented from entering the game, find time to pick out the pustule of Lannister and successfully remove it. In addition, Robert is not dead. The future battle of the 5 kings will be almost broken down, and then use some means such as in order to integrate Westeros' 7 kingdoms, and finally have a fight with the White Walkers. With this idea, Leonor packed his luggage and rushed back to King's Landing with 600 soldiers. It was about a week from the Summer Hall to King's Landing. Leonor rushed forward, but unfortunately when he rushed back to King's Landing, he still heard something bad from Janos Slynt, the commander of the capital garrison. News: just as old John died, Robert sent him a letter, and took his palace to the north. Queen Cersei Lannister followed with King's Guard James Lannister, and King's Landing City. All matters were handled by the 5 ministers of the Imperial meeting. It's late. Leonor's mouth twitched slightly, and it turned out that the plan could not keep up with the changes. Robert's operation to the north had already pushed up the wheel of fate. He could not take people to pull him back now. At this point, Leonor had no good idea, so he could only go to the Red Fort's convention hall and meet with the 5 ministers who are now in charge of all affairs in King's Landing City. Robert is not a guy who is suitable for managing the country, and he understands this very well, so he continues the Targaryen Imperial Conference system: be a mascot, eat, drink and have fun, and give all his power to his trusted adoptive father. Duke John Elling, who served as the king like the Prime Minister, led the Imperial meeting to handle national affairs. The previous Imperial meeting was led by John Elan, the King's Hand, and the Royal Guard Captain Balliston Searmy, the Chancellor of the Finance Minister Petyr Baelish, and the Minister of the Superintendent Stannis Baratheon, Minister of Intelligence Varys and Grand Secretary Pyshil assisted. Now John Elan died suddenly, and there were only 5 people left in the Imperial meeting, but Robert was obviously not satisfied with them. Otherwise he would not have rushed to go to the north to find Ed Stark. There was a flame burning in the fireplace, with neat short hair, and wearing a green robe. Leonor walked through the reception room and came to the conference table. He glanced at the hanging main seat first, and looked at the white beard on the left side of the long table. Balliston of A bowed slightly to him. Teacher. We've been missing for a long time. Balliston was not only his martial arts teacher, but also once escorted him to the frontier and served as a guard by his side for more than a year. Leonor's teacher was definitely true. Your Highness, we haven't met for about a year, Balliston responded formally to Leonor's kindness. As the captain of the Royal Guard, he was only loyal to Robert on the Iron Throne. Balliston was very polite, but his respect for Leonor was also useful. He was just about to say something, but he was interrupted by a trembling voice. Your Highness, it's time for you to come back. Teacher Pacier, we have been missing for 3 years. You still look so healthy. Leonor smiled at Pacier, the old man in white robe who interrupted Balliston, but it was somewhat formulaic. After saying that, he also smiled. Before he could reply, he looked at a thin middle-aged man next to him with a light cheek. He was wearing a green double-breasted windbreaker, with silver jewelry and a robin-shaped collar and belt, which was very delicate. You must be Lord Petyr Baelish. Yes, Your Highness. The middle-aged man with a light cheek was slightly shy and bowed to the young man with a cold temperament but gentle temperament. You are excellent. Leonor smiled and looked at the last person present. Then you must be Lord Varys. What he saw was a tall man with dough, wearing shiny silk clothes, his hands hooked into his sleeves. His dress and posture were a bit distorted. You are so polite, His Highness Leonor. The tall man in a brocade robe spoke with a slightly sharp voice. As if he was feminine, he's really a eunuch. Leonor tried his best to prevent himself from looking at the intelligence minister Varys, so as not to offend the other party. His eyes glanced around the table and couldn't help but frown. Stannis, where's my brother? After Leonor glanced at the audience, he found that there was one person missing. Stannis was not here as the Minister of the Navy. Your Highness, this is exactly what we want to report to you. Duke Stannis returned to his fiefdom after leaving the King's palace in His Majesty's Wheel Palace. Balliston reported something to Leonor in a deep voice. Stannis returns to Dragonstone Island. He said nothing. Leonor let go of his eyebrows. Yes, he worked with Duke John before, and he seemed very sad about the death of his old man. The trembling Pasil spoke up to cover Stannis, saying that his farewell was sad. It seems that he guessed from the hair color of Joffrey and the other three that Robert was wearing a hat. He slipped away overnight because he was afraid of being assassinated together. He ran very quickly, but you didn't say hello to him. I beat, and even didn't send anyone to remind me, and I was too ignorant of my brotherhood. Leonor was a little dissatisfied with Stannis, who had escaped, and asked calmly, have Renly notified him to come back? Yes, Duke Renly is on his way to Junlin, but before that, there was no chief in Junlin City, so Balliston sneered a little. He glanced at the other people around him. He is a knight and is not good at government affairs. Varys is the Minister of Finance and is in charge of money. Varys is the Minister in charge of intelligence, and Pace is the Grand Secretary, but he has no sense of ownership, and in short, it is not the person who handles government affairs. I understand. If Junlin has something to do now, tell me directly. Seeing the current situation, Leonor sat straight on the main seat of the long table and began to take charge of the overall situation with no choice. The first thing is that the finances of the kingdom are very difficult. His Majesty is keen on organizing various competitions. Coupled with the Iron Islands rebellion 6 years ago, the country's vault is currently in huge deficits. Aishai smiled and timid. Petyr Baelish reported to Leonor immediately. So what? Leonor raised his eyes slightly, looked up and down at the slender, handsome, middle-aged man. His eyes swept over his unprotruding but unusually delicate robin silver jewelry with his unprotruding collar buckle and belt. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22. What is Game of Thrones? The pressure. The young man who had just been gentle just now was only cold, and his cold eyes made people think of the moon in the sky, so Petyr had to bend his back slightly. Your Highness, I don't mean that. The current deficit in the vault. Petyr lowered his face and spoke carefully to explain to himself. I didn't ask you to tell me the amount of the deficit in the vault and the reason for the deficit, but asked you, what's the point of telling me about this? As the Minister of Finance, if you have such a big deficit, don't you explain your reasons? Ono has been practicing the star god view of the heavens for a long time, thinking about the stars and souls, and presided over the construction of the Midsummer Hall. His aura had long been developed. After some words, Petyr's heart beat faster and he looked surprised. Why did it touch me? I'm just the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Petyr couldn't help but raise his head and showed a surprised expression on his face. What does the deficit of the treasury have to do with him? Leonor was so angry that he saw Petyr's expression that he shouted, Varys, Your Highness. The fat man with the dough felt a tightening back of his head and quickly stood forward, like a primary school student named, You are the person in charge of intelligence. Do you know our Chancellor of the Exchequer? Leonor asked the fat man. Varys' forehead was sweating. Huh? Leonor's voice was heavier. What do you want to know about Lord Varys? Varys accompanied him to be careful. Then tell me how much Golden Dragon is paid to King's Landing in the entire Westeros every year. Leonor asked a question. Why did you suddenly ask this? Varys was a little confused, but after thinking about it carefully, he replied, It should be between 80,000 golden dragons and 100,000 golden dragons, depending on the harvest in various places, then the operation of King's Landing City and Kingdom Rule, I mean the salary of the staff of the Rudo City Garage, as well as the equipment they use. How much does it cost to spend in a year? The king's personal expenses should not be included. Leon and Yuo briefly described the accounts he wanted. Your Highness, when Petyr heard Leonor's method of settlement, he immediately became unhealthy. Because the current deficit in the national vault was caused by Robert's personal food, drink and fun, I didn't ask you. As the Minister of Finance, if the accounts are not settled clearly, don't speak for me. Leonor stopped Petyr in one sip, and then asked Varys, you say, it should be around 20,000 to 30,000 golden dragons, Your Highness. Varys felt the pressure so much that his scalp was numb. He plucked up his courage to explain, but was stopped by the drink. So there should be a surplus of at least 50,000 golden dragons every year. Now, let me tell me again, how much wealth does our Chancellor have? Leonor pointed at Petyr and suddenly raised a question. Don't tell me, you can't answer. Leonor blocked Varys's retreat, which was related to the financial deficit and the Minister of Finance. If the Minister of Intelligence cannot get information, what should he do? Varys raised his head and was completely stunned. He never expected that Leonor was still checking the accounts just now, and now he turned the topic back to Petyr. His personal property and the treasury were deficient. So that's it, Varys suddenly understood. No wonder every time the country's treasury was deficient. Petyr could always find a way to get money. Tell me, Leonor urged Varys to answer. There are about 10,000 golden dragons in Lord Barish's house. Varys thought about some of the reasons and directly reported a number 10,000 golden dragons. When he heard Varys' answer, Ballistan frowned, and Pychel showed some surprised expression. He glanced at Petyr, who had regained his calmness, and then buried his face again and pretended to be everything. An attitude that has nothing to do with it. 10,000 golden dragons. Leonor frowned. The number was too small, but he owns a brothel, a salt field, and a boat. Varys followed again, which attracted Petyr's glare. Real estate is right. How much is it together? Leonor was inspired and turned into real estate. No wonder he had so little cash. I can't figure it out. It's probably not less than 1 million golden dragons. Varys made an estimate, which made both Ballistan and Pychel unable to help but widen their eyes. Varys. Your Highness, these are my personal legal property and have nothing to do with the deficit of the state's treasury. Petyr glared at the fat eunuch, stopped his words, and at the same time made a statement to Leonor. Looking at Petyr, who was anxious and blushing, Varys suddenly remembered and said to Leonor, by the way, I remember, Your Highness, Lord Barish still has a huge deposit in the Iron Vault. I have friends who can find it. Shut up. Petyr's face began to turn from red to white. Come. Leonor stood up directly and began to shake people outside. Your Highness. Petyr's face turned pale. He wanted to get close to Leonor, but was stopped by Ballistan in white robe and white armor as a royal guard who specializes in guarding his background. How could Ballistan let Petyr approach Leonor? With a sound of footsteps, the guards of the Midsummer Hall, wearing armor and sharp swords on their waists, had already stepped into the hall. Following Leonor's instructions, they directly pressed the pale Petyr to the ground. Petyr, who was pale, was crushed to the ground in front of him. Varys, in gorgeous clothes, carefully took 2 steps back, and showed a worried and scared expression on his face. Your Highness, Ballistan turned his head and looked at Leonor. As the kingdom has such a big deficit, as the Minister of Finance, Petyr Barish could not escape the blame. He cut off his head and inserted his head into the spear tip of the city wall. Leonor put etched in the face of the city wall. Tucker's fate was given to Petyr Barish. This little finger who believes in confusion as the latter can be said to be the source of all chaos in a sense, and an existence that must be eliminated. Your Highness, this is too rough. The trembling Pychel was surprised. How could Game of Thrones play like this? I am the Minister of Justice. The king is not here. I will rule on all matters and wait for the king to come back to deal with me if you have any matters. Lord Pychel, you are an old minister who serves and guards the Dragon King of Targaryen. Don't you understand this? Leonor swept his eyes at Pychel. His cold eyes began to release the pressure. Pychel shrank his head at the first time. Execute it. Leonor directly crossed the Ballistan with a confused expression and wanted to speak, and waved directly to the guards. The soldiers brought from the Midsummer Hall dragged the limp Petyr Barish out without any hesitation. Ballistan. Leonor watched Petyr being dragged away and suddenly shouted again. Yes, the old white-robed knight realized that he called him, and quickly turned around and bowed to the young man. You go and search the property of the Barish family and be sure to recover the wealth belonging to the state vault. Varys, you send someone to help count it to avoid omissions. Sir, you send someone to be responsible for the statistics. Is there any problem? Leonor, we set out to arrange the collection of the property of the Petyr Barish family. No problem. Varys nodded directly. I don't have it either. Pychel realized it and hurriedly said that there was no problem. fearing that he would be one step slower. So, what other problems do our country have in the next item? Leonor made a one-size-fits-all approach to the national property issue, and at the same time killed Petyr on the excuse. He was very satisfied and began to ask other questions. Chapter 23, Response. There are still many affairs in the Westeros, including those related to the nobles, people's livelihood, and the Iron Throne, such as the whereabouts of Viserys and Daenerys, the last dragon descendants of Targaryen. Rhys informed the matter and asked Leonor to arrange the disposal. How did you know where these two people are? Leonor put his hands casually on the armrest, looking at Varys with inquiring eyes. The news sent back by my little birds. Varys chose to answer carefully. Continue to pay attention. These two people have no major problems. The only thing to pay attention to is the people who want to use them to shake our rule. Leonor did not pursue the source of information from Varys, but reminded Varys of his subsequent work points. The Targaryen brothers and sisters are not important. Even Daenerys cannot pull out of the team and can't rule Westeros with a dragon. What is important is those who want to take advantage of Targaryen's remaining power. I have continued to pay attention to the Orneys and continue to monitor all those who come into contact with Targaryen Dragonborn to find out their origins and belongings. As far as I know, Viserys now intends to bring his sister Daenerys to his knowledge. She married a Dothrakian Ko, who seemed to want to retake the Iron Throne with the help of the Dothrakian power. Varys quickly assured and told a recent situation of the dragon brother and sister, who built a bridge for them. Leonor asked, a governor of Pantis, named Illyrio Mopatis, was a mercenary when he was young, and later became rich and gained status by marrying a princess. He explained the situation of Illyrio in detail. This Illyrio and Varys seemed to be companions. Leonor heard Varys talk endlessly, as if he could even say anything in the color of Illyrio's underwear, and he curled his lips in his heart. The intelligence minister was quite good at pretending he felt disdainful, but Leonor still pretended not to know. Compared to Littlefinger, he still had a lot of things to use for Varys next. Let's let him go first. When Varys made a rough introduction to Illyrio's intelligence and showed off his identity as the Minister of Information, he spoke. I see. Varys showed off for a long time, and saw that Leonor had only one response. He couldn't help but become stupid. Leonor ignored Varys and turned to Patsel and said, Pager, write a decree, and in the name of the kingdom, to the kingdom's territories, to prohibit all ships of Pantis from approaching the port of Westeros, to prohibit business with the merchants of Pantis, and to violate it, severe punishment will be carried out. What's the use of this command? Not to mention Pasil. Even Balliston slapped the corner of his mouth. Pantis is one of the major trading city-states. I wonder how many nobles are trading with him. Can this kind of interest connection be interrupted by a decree? And it is a decree that has not explained the punishment. Balliston was willing to dissuade him, but when he thought that Leonor was young and energetic, he could only shut up. It was not a big deal anyway, so let him go. Patrol also had some discussions in his heart, but as the person who was directly ordered, he nodded and replied yes. You put the matters you want to deal with now into a list. Write down the whole story clearly, and then let's discuss it again. I'm a little tired now. Thank you for your hard work. And you must complete the collection of the Barish family's property as soon as possible. Yes, Balliston. Varys and Pacer nodded together. After Balliston, Varys and Pacer left, Leonor clenched his fists slightly and a smile appeared on his face for a while. Leonor calmed down, got up and left the living room, and came to a balcony to watch the whole city. He saw a thin head stuck on the spear of the Red Castle gate. It was Petyr Baelish head, a man who was called Littlefinger, who always claimed that he had slept with Tully sisters, had his head cut off and was inserted into the city wall. HMPH. Leonor looked down at Petyr's head that was stuck on the tip of the gun, reached out and patted the railing of the balcony, closed his eyes and began to think about the current situation. Robert still went to the north. He should have brought Ed Stark back to King's Landing for a while, but he had already cleared his Littlefinger. Without this troublemaker, the next scene should not be too difficult, but I can't be without preparation. The Lannister family is a big thunder. To prevent them, they must grasp the power in King's Landing. Come on. Leonor opened his eyes and shouted out. The sound of footsteps came, and Dorrit, who followed Leonor to King's Landing, led two guards in, bowed to the balcony and called, Sir, send someone to find out who is the current leader of the Golden Robe. Let's see what his crime is. Yes, Dorrit turned to a guard and told him to do this, while he stayed there and waited for Leonor's next order. The largest military force in Genland City is the capital garrison, which is commonly known as the Golden Robe. This force must be held in one's own hands, Come Ake again, ask her to bring a group of accountants here and meet me in the vault. Leonor conveyed the order again. Yes, Dorit sent another guard away, and he followed Leonor away from the Prime Minister's tower and went out to take a group of soldiers to the vault. The Vault of Redford is not simply a place to store gold, but a place where a large number of books are placed, which is also the office of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. When Leonor brought his men here, some golden robes were searching for things here, and a bunch of thin men in sackcloths were held together and crying softly. Who are those? Leonor came directly to young golden robe, pointed to the men in Ma who were being held up and asked, what does this have to do with you? Get away quickly and don't block us from doing things. The young golden robe was a little ruthless and could not recognize who the black-haired young man in front of him was. It seems that I have not arranged a garrison to handle the vault matter. Leonor frowned slightly at the young golden robe, but then he remembered that although the Capital Complete team had its own commander, they were the captain of the Imperial Guard. That is, the old Ballistan was responsible for it. It was probably the old Ballistan arranged them over. Tell him who I am. Leonor turned around and signaled to Dorit. Standing before you is the Prince of the Midsummer Hall, the Minister of Justice of the Royal Conference, Lord Leonor Baratheon, who had just ordered the execution of Petyr Barish, and also ordered you to deal with the Lord's heir. Tell me quickly, who is that? Dorit became Leonor's substitute, pointing to the pile of men in the middle of the linen in the distance and asking the young golden robe to answer Prince of the Midsummer Hall and Minister of Justice. The young golden robe was stunned. After coming to his senses, he wanted to introduce himself. Sir, I am Mate Slint, the Capital Guard. I only asked you one question. Leonor Uo stopped the other party's self-introduction in a deep voice. It's Barish's men, some scribes who are good at calculating. Take these guys down and take them to the Prime Minister's tower to arrange. Leonor immediately felt energetic when he heard that he was an accountant, so he turned around and asked Dorit to take them down, and then began to organize the acceptance of the account book. He asked Ballistan, Varys and Shield to search the house, while he set out to receive the accounts of King Landing's vault, intending to clarify the current financial status of King Landing. Chapter 24. Check the account. I don't know if I don't check this account, and I'll be shocked when I check it. Leonor organized his own accountants, plus the scribes under Petyr, to record the state treasury. After some calculations, Leonor found that King Landing City is really out of money now. Not only is it out of money, but it also has 8 million golden dragon debts from the personal needs of King Robert Baratheon. He squandered the wealth of the state's vault, and also used the name of the Iron Throne to the Lannisters, the Tyrells, the Church, the Bravos Iron Vault and the Tyre Luoxi Trading Bank borrowed money separately, building up debts of up to 8 million jinlong. Let me see. I see. Robert's personal meal costs 30,000 golden dragon every year. What does he eat? I heard that there is a gold mine in Caen City, and the Lannisters eat it. It's gold, but at least what people pull out is gold. Leonor directly complained with the bill. Calculate the types and quantities of food he eats in a year, and then calculate the total price of food in the meal. Under Leonor's request, many accountants began to re-record the bills and finally calculated the quantity and unit price of the food. 1 egg, 2 silver deer. Petyr is really a good calculation. Leonor almost vomited blood when he saw the price of the vegetable. How bad is that guy Robert? Leonor was very angry, but good news was quickly heard back from Ballistan. The national treasury was ripped off by Petyr, but Petyr himself was rich. Ballistan led his men to find out the cash worth 9,000 gold dragons and a large number of servants from his house, and then learned through torture. This guy owns more than 30 brothels in King's Landing City alone, which imprison hundreds of women of age, who spread their legs to pick up customers for him every day by seizing the brothel. Ballistan once again collected jewelry and property worth 300,000 gold dragons, and then searched a little further, and the news was sent back one after another. Finally, according to Leonor's request, Ballistan personally supervised. Varys's little bird tracked and counted, sent Shill's scribes to record, and when all the property was checked, the value was copied, including King's property. The jewelry wealth of 700,000 golden dragon is worth more than 1.2 million golden dragon, and many salt fields, mills, logging farms, mines and real estate, and finally 16 fully equipped merchant ships and sailors who run ships. Leonor gave the final solution based on the search list. Petyr himself was convicted of treason for corruption, and was beheaded and displayed in public, confiscated the fiefdom and all private property of the Barry family, and directly charged it into the state treasury for Petyr's fiefdom and private property. The brothel was disbanded on the spot. Each girl paid 3 golden dragon severance payments and allowed him to go. As for other salt farms, mills, logging farms, mining areas and real estate, they were classified under the National Treasury, but maintained the original management system until Leonor designated personnel accepted it made things happen, and the National Vault was finally not in a state of running rats. Leonor also breathed a sigh of relief. He was satisfied with his brother Robert, who was waiting for the return of the evil-making brother, to make him want to let him go. Open your eyes and see what your methods are. Before Robert returned from the north, Renly, who had rushed back from the storm, arrived at King's Landing first in the early morning. Leonor rode a horse and took several knights to meet Renly's team at the King's Gate on the southwest side of King's Landing city. He saw a long cavalry team, each of whom was armed with the weapons under the green-crowned stag. Renly, wearing glazed green armor and antler helmet, walked in front of the white horse. His handsome face was unwilling to tolerate Leonor, and behind him was a white horse wearing rose-patterned armor. The young man, the two of them were talking and only found Leonor in short clothes when they were close. My brother, Leonor stood in the open space, spreading his arms to Renly, and a smile appeared on his face. The last time he met this guy was at Stannis' wedding, and he was only then his half-old child. My brother, Renly saw Leonor in short clothes and strong clothes, and also showed a bright smile on her face. She first took off the deer antler helmet and threw it to the young man beside her, then turned over and dismounted, and went out of the horse with Leonor made her hug. You look good. Leonor patted Renly on the back, and then took advantage of his unpreparedness and suddenly stretched out an arm to tie his neck directly. Let go, let go. Renly was caught off guard and was not very adaptable. She lifted her head, her face became reluctant, and she patted her brother's arm with her palm and begged to let go, but the strength is not great. Leonor hugged Renly for a while, and when he saw that he did not resist, he also let go of his arm at the right time. Strength is not the whole of an excellent knight. Renly was relaxed and retorted to Leonor. What else? Leonor asked with a smile, while sweeping his eyes at the young man who came with Renly and glared at him with his eyes. There are also loyalty and courage. The young man spoke first with Renly's antler helmet in his arms. Who is he? Leonor smiled and turned to ask Renly. Sir Loras, the third son of the Tyrell family. Renly looked at a loss. Leonor's smile suddenly became calm. He turned to look at the boy named Lolas, and then looked at the helpless Renly, his eyes wandering between the two, and he remembered some small interesting stories. At that time, it was just an interesting story about eating melons. Now, Mr. Leonor, your eyes are not polite. Loras was not very satisfied with Leonor's eyes. That's really embarrassing. Leonor smiled faintly, turned around and pulled Renly's arm, forcibly leading him to the city of Junlin. Leonor, slow down. Renly was not very adapted to Leonor's drag, and tried to break free while following quickly. Leonor let go of Renly while he was moving, waved away the guards coming from the surrounding area, and asked them to keep a distance before whispering to Renly with her. I've heard some rumors about sweet wine. Are they true or false? Renly's expression suddenly became worse and she answered silently. What are you going to do? Leonor and Renly walked side by side on Lynn Avenue, heading towards the Red Fort in the distance. My brother, my personal life has nothing to do with you. His Majesty the King has sealed the Midsummer Hall and appointed me as the Lord of the Storm Guardian and the Wind Sniff Castle. We all have their own missions. Renly was a little angry. He suspected that Leonor was implying that he had no descendants like this, and no one could inherit Fancy Castle without descendants. I'm just talking about your question. Why did you say so much at once? Leonor showed a surprised expression. This guy thought he was coveting Fancy Castle. I have no problem. My destiny is decided by the gods, and you can't help but point fingers. Renly replied stiffly. Okay. Since you don't want me to interfere, I won't ask. Leonor glanced at the angry Renly and shook his head directly. This was not the kid who asked for biscuits from him when he was hungry. The atmosphere fell into an awkward silence for a moment. Renly and Leonor walked side by side. Seeing that he really had nothing to say, he couldn't help but want to say something, but there was no topic. After a long silence, he took out a pendant. Look at this. Chapter 25 Renly's Plan. What? Leonor took the gold pendant from Renly and saw a small square box with a bright and charming girl's sketch. She had a melon-shaped face, her claws wrapped around the hair on the back of her head, and her mouth was slightly curled up, and his facial features are somewhat similar to those of the young man Lolas just now. Who? Leonor remembered who this was, but he did not say it clearly, but returned the pendant to Renly. Her name is Margaret Tyrell. Renly put away the pendant, put his hands behind him, and walked side by side with Leonor from the river to the red fort in the distance. Who is Loras? She is Lola's youngest sister. Do you think she looks very similar to someone? Renly asked a vague question. Who? Leonor was confused by Renly's already vague questions. Lyanna Stark. Renly's face showed an expression of it turns out you don't know. I haven't seen Lyanna Stark. Do you want to send this girl to Robert's bed? Leonor understood. Renly planned to replace Cersei Lannister, but in the plot, because Robert died of assassination. In order to win over the Tyrion family, he had to personally take the battle to win over the woman nicknamed Little Rose. Lannister is a strong enemy, and Robert has always planned to deal with them. Renly showed a confident expression. If he really makes this decision, then he is not Robert. Leonor smiled contemptuously. If Robert really makes this determination, he really should look up to the other party. What does this mean? Renly was stunned by Leonor's slightly contemptuous words. Our brother, he has never been a person with great ambitions. All his decisions were a temporary rise in emotional impulse. He opposed Targaryen back then, but now he doesn't like Lannister, and he is the same. Otto complained directly. As long as you have this emotion, it's fine. When he really reaches that step, he can't make a decision. Renly showed a very sure expression. What do you know? Leonor's expression became serious, as if everyone except himself knew about Robert's hat. I know as much as you know, my brother. Renly smiled, and he consciously won the game back. I know you will die in the future, under the magic commanded by Stannis. Do you believe it? Leonor complained in his heart, but he didn't say this after all. Stannis left without saying goodbye in King's Landing City. He was unhappy with his second brother, but Renly was still his younger brother. What do you think I plan? You are not confident in yourself. Leonor mocked him directly. I'm discussing with you. Renly's face turned red. Why do you have the idea of being a gunman for the Tyrion family? Is it the spear of Loras? Leonor couldn't help asking. You? Renly's face turned redder. Or he is a scabbard. Lyanna's question became even more bizarre and tricky. Enough. Renly was furious. Okay. Leonor quickly comforted Renly. Do whatever you like. I don't object. No objection? What does this mean? Renly was not very satisfied with Leonor's words. I'm not interested in who is sitting on the Iron Throne. Leonor directly expressed himself, and what he was interested in was sitting on the Iron Throne directly. Renly showed a surprised expression. You don't know what Robert has made this country like. I am now the Minister of Justice and I have endless things to do. Leonor showed a headache to Renly. He was really a headache, although the vault was filled with Petier's property. But Robert made it too big. My biggest wish now is Robert stops making trouble for me. Hope. Renly wanted to laugh when she heard Leonor's wish. She really wanted to laugh. What kind of person is Robert? Is this possible? If you want to laugh, just laugh. If you go to see Balliston later, don't laugh. By the way, has Stannis sent someone to find you? Leonor tried to get some about Stannis from Renly. Even a little bit of news made him feel that that guy was still a relative. He's not in King's Landing City. Renly's expression became unexpected. Robb went to the north, and when he heard that he had returned to Dragonstone Island, he didn't say hello. Leonor knew that his expectations had failed when he saw Renly's expression. He thought Stannis knew more. Has Robert gone to the north? He wrote to me and told me that I thought he would wait for me to go with me. Renly was shocked by another message from Leonor's mouth and his eyebrows frowned. Isn't he always like this? Leonor relieved Renly. As the king, Robert has always been at his will and will not wait for anyone, but we are his brothers. Renly knew Robert's situation in the north, and was not very satisfied with his trust in Ed Stark than Leonor. When he was in Ed Stark, he grew up with Lord Jon with Ed Stark, and Ed is also his brother. Leonor asked Renly to relax his mind. Ed Stark is also our savior and can be trusted, but we are obviously his brothers, and we should be closer in blood. Renly was still uncomfortable. Haha. Leonor smiled and said nothing. The bloody closeness was worse, which meant that they were more qualified to approach the Iron Throne than Ed Stark. Why did Robert finally overwhelm other nobles and become the Iron Throne guest? In addition to the strong help of the Ellen family and the Stark family, it was not just because of the blood relatives between Baratheon and Targaryen back then. This meager bloodline completed the political and legal continuation outside the military, allowing the Targaryen dynasty to successfully transition to the Baratheon dynasty. It is hard to say that Robert was affected by Jon's death and became very afraid of Stannis, Leonor and Renly, so he couldn't wait to go to the north to find his sworn brother Ed Stark. While Leonor and Renly were talking and laughing, Before they arrived at the Red Fort, just as they were leading a large number of cavalrymen to enter the castle, a man in scale ran out from the side of the Red Fort door and faced him. The long line shouted the name Leonor. Suddenly he heard someone calling him. Leonor stopped marching with Renly, turned to look and saw a man with short brown hair and about 20 years old shouting from the air, being shouted by Renly and his cavalrymen. They stopped them. Let him come here. Leonor felt inexplicably familiar when he saw the brown-haired man's facial features. When he thought about it, he could think of the familiar source. He looked very much like a person and once gave it to Fancy Castle. Davos, a smuggler who goes to the onion and dried fish. Well, his full name now should be called Davos Seaworth, Mr. Leonor, my name is Arad Seaworth. I was ordered by my father Sir Davos to come to you. The man in scales came straight to Leonor, first showing that identity. Are you sure I am Leonor? Leonor couldn't help but make some jokes when he saw the reckless man. This Arad was indeed Davos' son. His current reckless actions were the same as those invading Fancy. Davos at the fort banquet was exactly the same. Arad raised his head and looked at the handsome man with the black hair and blue eyes, and was a little stunned. I am Leonor. What message did your father send me? Leonor smiled silently and decided not to tease this guy anymore. My father? Wait first, do Stannis know your father's message? Leonor suddenly interrupted Arad's message. He still wanted to have some hope for Stannis. Arad showed a confused expression, which made Leonor sigh in his heart. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.